Chapter 623. After receiving Zhu Yi's report, Lin Feng nodded slightly and asked, "Has the matter of the water marrow crystal vein been confirmed?" "It is true," Zhu Yi answered. "The mineral vein is near the exit of the domain passage. Separated by the domain passage, as long as one can see through the obstruction of the void, one can clearly see the part of the mineral vein that is exposed on the surface. The disciples are currently guarding the entrance of the domain channel. They have not yet entered the dimensional realm, so it is difficult to determine the specific size and quality of the crystal vein. But from the appearance of the part that is exposed to the surface, it is indeed a very outstanding crystal vein." Lin Feng said, "Very well done. Temporarily guard there, and do not enter. Wait for the others to meet up with you." After interrupting the sound transmission, Lin Feng turned to look at Yang Qing and smiled. "Your second senior apprentice brother and junior apprentice brother have discovered a completely new dimensional realm that no one has ever set foot in before." Yang Qing was stunned for a moment before saying, "A new dimensional realm? Are there any aboriginals there?" Lin Feng shook his head. "This dimensional realm is very primitive and barren. Perhaps it will breed life, but its level will not be high." "Master, I heard that many great forces will occupy a dimensional realm to develop and obtain resources. Some dimensional realms will even cause many forces to compete for them. In recent years, there have been very few uninhabited and primitive worlds." Yang Qing thought for a moment and slowly said, "I wonder what the situation of the resources in this dimensional realm is like. If it is rich and our sect occupies this ownerless world, it should be helpful for the development of our sect, right?" Lin Feng looked at him with interest and smiled. "That's right. Is there anything else?" Yang Qing blushed and smiled. "The things that this disciple has pondered over are very shallow." "No, that's right." Lin Feng shook his head and encouraged. "What else have you pondered over? Tell me." As Yang Qing was thinking, she asked, "Master, where is the dimensional realm's dimensional channel entrance?" "The southern foothills of the Kunlun Mountains." Lin Feng smiled and asked, "What do you think we should do next?" Yang Qingming was relieved to hear that the entrance of the passageway was in the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. That place was within his sphere of influence, and Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao were the first to discover it. He believed that no one else knew about it yet. Therefore, they had a lot of initiative and sufficient time. Yang Qing carefully said, "This disciple believes that we must first strictly guard the entrance to the domain channel. Before we are ready, we must prevent others from entering. Then we must enter the dimensional realm and explore it. We must determine the resources within as well as the potential dangers." Lin Feng asked, "Anything else?" After thinking for a moment, Yang Qing shook her head in embarrassment. "I can't think of the rest." Lin Feng smiled. Exploring a dimensional realm is not only to determine the resources and potential dangers within, but also to determine whether or not this dimensional realm has only opened a single interdimensional channel. Some dimensional realms only have one interdimensional channel that connects to the vast thousand realms, such as the ancient Desolate Sea realm. Some are not, such as the ancient Yuan-Tian realm, which has more than one interdimensional channel. Lin Feng looked at Yang Qing and said, "It is important to guard the channel that you control, but if you want to control the entire dimensional realm, then you must have a clear understanding of the world as a whole." Yang Qing nodded repeatedly. "Yes, this disciple understands. Learn slowly, it's already not bad." Lin Feng smiled and said, "When each of you reaches core formation, I will give you a Yuanying stage magic tool. This thing is for you." After saying that, Lin Feng's finger lightly pointed, and a white light fell in front of Yang Qing. It was a square wooden box. "This thing is called the Emptiness Cutting Blade. It is extremely evil and ferocious, and its lethality is amazing. I gave it to you mainly because your personality is more passive, so even your magic skills are more conservative, so I gave it to you to make up for it." Hearing Lin Feng say this, Yang Qing smiled. Of course, he knew his own situation, so he quickly thanked Lin Feng and accepted the wooden box. Under Lin Feng's guidance, Yang Qing refined this Yuanying stage magic tool and turned it into his own treasure. No matter if it's Shi Tianhao and the others forming nascent soul bestowing primordial spirit magic treasures, or Yangqing forming core bestowing nascent soul magic treasures, Lin Feng has to consider everything carefully. The treasures he prepares for them are all the most suitable for their actual situations. Just like what she said before, when Yangqing fights with others, no matter if it's his personal style or the divine abilities and techniques he grasps, he is rather passive, lacking strong offensive and killing methods. That's why Lin Feng bestowed him the void-severing blade to make up for his shortcomings. This Yuanying stage magic tool was drawn from the lottery in the system before. He couldn't use it himself, so he kept it. At that time, he was actually preparing for Yangqing's core formation today. The Emptiness Aura Slashing Blade's attack power is among the top of the nascent soul stage magic items, and it's also quite evil. After Lin Feng obtained this item, he immediately felt that it was more suitable for Yangqing, so he never took this treasure to the exchange system. Yangqing put away the Emptiness Cutting Blade, and Lin Feng said, "Okay, go with your third senior brother to find your second senior brother and your junior brother." He called Wang Lin and told him what had happened. Wang Lin's face was calm, but there was a little more excitement in his eyes. He nodded and said, "Disciple will go there now." Lin Feng nodded and said, "When you get there, the few of you will explore the medium-class world. On the one hand, it's the mineral resources, and on the other hand, it's the overall environment of the world. Pay attention to both." Wang Lin and Yangqing bowed together and said, "Disciple obeys." Lin Feng called Zen Master Date again, explained the cause and effect, and said, "Master, thank you for making a trip." Zen Master Dade put his palms together and said with a smile, "Sect Master, don't worry. I will guard the realm passage, and let the others explore the medium-class world without worry." The old monk was sophisticated and generous, so he put his position in the right place. "Thank you for your hard work, Master." Lin Feng nodded. Wang Lin, Yangqing, and Zen Master Dade immediately went down Yujing Mountain and rushed to the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain to meet up with Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao. Xiao Yan was working hard to polish his magical power at the moment, making the final preparations for forming his nascent soul. Yu Hongyan was practicing in seclusion. Li Yuanfang and Luo Qinggu had just entered the sect, so they were also concentrating on their cultivation. So this time, Lin Feng did not send them out. Wang Lin and Yangqing followed Zen Master Dade through space and soon found the place according to the guidance of Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao. Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao were standing in a valley at the moment. In the depths of the valley there was a huge space crack. In the space, a scroll flashing with colorful light was floating silently, as if it was hanging in the air. It was the decree that Lin Feng gave to Zhu Yi. The decree exerted its power and firmly fixed the space crack in front of everyone. As time passed, the light of the decree became dimmer and dimmer, and the spiritual power of the scroll became thinner and thinner. However, the space crack had completely stabilized at the moment, like a door to another world. When Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao saw Zen Master Dade, they both bowed. Zen Master Dade politely returned the bow without the slightest arrogance. This place is located at the edge of the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain, connected to the border of the Great Qin Dynasty, and also close to the sphere of influence of Mount Shu Sword Sect. Zhu Yi was the first to speak. Although we were the first to discover this medium-class world, we still need to carefully prepare and plan if we want to truly control it. Everyone nodded. The Desolate Sea ancient world was located in the territory of the Great Qin Dynasty, and it was coveted by many forces. The Great Qin Dynasty held the Desolate Sea Dharma Assembly, and allowed the heirs of other forces to enter the ancient world to train. This was both a way to win people over, and also a compromise. Occupying the entrance to the medium-class world, and prioritizing the management of the world was just the beginning. If they wanted to truly control this medium-class world, or at least occupy a leading position, there was still a lot of work to be done. Zen Master Dade said, "You can enter this medium-class world without worry. This poor monk will guard the entrance here and prevent others from entering." Zhu Yi and the others said in unison, "Thank you, Senior. However, you have to be careful when you enter. There is no need to mention the dangers in the medium-class world itself. You also have to be wary of other entrances and cultivators from other forces." Zen Master Dade solemnly warned. Zhu Yi and the others nodded. After that, Zen Master Dade sat down cross-legged in the valley and guarded the entrance of the realm passage with peace of mind. Meanwhile, Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others entered the medium-class world together. Tunton, who had traveled with Shi Tianhao before, asked curiously, "Speaking of which, what should we call this medium-class world? Since we were the first to discover it, we should be able to name it, right?" Zhu Yi smiled faintly and said, "Before I came, Master told me to call it by our sect's name, the Heaven Mystic Realm." Heaven Mystic Realm? Tunton smacked his lips. "That's fine. The key is to see what good things are in the Heaven Mystic Realm." After passing through the realm passage and officially entering the Heaven Mystic Realm, the first thing that caught everyone's eyes was a crystal river-like mineral vein. This was naturally the water marrow crystal vein that Shi Tianhao had mentioned before. This was an extremely large mineral vein. Silently, just the part that was exposed to the surface was already very spectacular, and the part that was buried underground would only be larger. As soon as Tunton saw it, her eyeballs fell to the ground and she couldn't pick them up. If it weren't for Shi Tianhao's sharp eyes and quick hands, she would have thrown herself onto the mineral vein. Besides the water marrow crystal vein, let's see if there are any other resources. Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, and the others exchanged a glance. At the same time, we can also investigate and see if there are any other realm passages in the Heaven Mystic Realm besides the entrance behind us. While Xianmen Tianzong and the others were discussing, they didn't know that on the other side of the Heaven Mystic Realm, the sky suddenly distorted violently. The domain power collapsed, and a huge hole was torn open in the domain barrier of the dimensional realm. This hole was very unstable, like a giant beast that swallowed people and opened its bloody mouth. An old man rushed out of the hole and landed in the Heaven Mystic Realm. The old man was tall and had a fierce face. Although his face was weathered, it couldn't hide his heroic spirit. "It wasn't easy for me to finally get out of the void battlefield, but I ran into you annoying guys. If this continues, the heaven and earth treasures I prepared for my precious Hao will dissipate completely." He spat and turned his head to look at the huge hole in the sky. He saw a few more figures rushing out from the hole. Their auras were overbearing, and their magic power reached the heavens. They descended into the Heaven Mystic Realm together. Chapter 624. Lin Feng's previous worries had become a reality. Apart from the one discovered by Zhu Yi and Shi Tianhao, a second one had appeared in the Xiantian realm that led to the outside world. However, this one did not lead to the colossal world, but to the void battlefield. The tunnel was still unstable and kept twisting. An old man and several black-robed men rushed out from it. The old man was tall and burly. His hair was messy and his beard was unshaven, but one could still tell that he was an extremely handsome man when he was young. At this moment he looked tired and injured, but his spirit was overwhelming. Essence chi surged around him as if it could carry the world. The old man flipped his palm and revealed a brocade box made of white jade. He carefully opened the box and saw a few bright red fruits inside. His nose moved slightly as he sniffed the scent of the fruits. A smile appeared on the old man's face. "Not bad, not bad. Most of the spiritual chi is still preserved." Behind him, 3 black-robed men surrounded him. Each of their dharma power and aura were extremely terrifying. It was as if they had become one with the world and pressed down together. The 3 of them were all primordial divinity realm experts. As soon as they arrived in the Xiantian realm, they stood in a triangular formation and surrounded the old man. "Shi Zhongtian, although you achieved the primordial divinity realm in the void battlefield, you will not be able to escape today. Come with us obediently." The old man called Shi Zhongtian was not afraid. Instead he laughed. "Nonsense. I made a trip into the void battlefield and almost died in there for the sake of finding some treasures for my grandson. Now that I've finally come out, I naturally have to rush back home to see my grandson. How could I have the time to talk nonsense with all of you?" He looked up at the sky and sighed. The time in the void battlefield is too messy. Time passes at different speeds in different places. I can't even tell how much time has passed in the colossal world outside. Is it 13 years or 14 years? Shi Zhongtian smiled and shook his head. "Forget it. It's fine if you can't tell. After all, More than a decade has passed. Howard must have grown up. I wonder what he looks like now. Is he as handsome as me and his father? Or did he give birth to a chubby little boy? Haha, just thinking about it makes me excited. Even though he was surrounded by 3 primordial soul realm powerhouses of the same realm as him, the old man was still able to talk cheerfully and fearlessly. What he was thinking about was how to reunite with his family. The 3 black-robed men didn't get angry. The leader stared at Shi Zhongtian and said indifferently, "Your grandson is called Shi Tianhao, right?" Shi Zhongtian's smile faded a little as he looked at the man in the black robe with a solemn expression. "Have you heard of my grandson?" The black-robed man said calmly, "Born with the supreme Taoist root. Why haven't I heard of it?" Shi Zhongtian was slightly startled, and then he laughed and said, Good. Although I felt that Hao Er's physique was special, I didn't expect that he was born with a supreme Tao foundation. Good. That's great." At this time the black-robed man said, "He is indeed special, but it's a pity that his supreme Tao foundation was seized by his brother from the same clan, the dual-pupiled person Shi Tianyi, to the extent that he died in the end, becoming a stepping stone for the dual-pupiled person's rise for no reason. Pitiful and lamentable." The smile on Shi Zhongtian's face disappeared, and he stared at the black-robed man. "You said that my Hao Er is dead?" The black-robed man smiled. "That happened when the child was half a year old. Think about it yourself. A half-year-old child's foundation was seized by someone using a secret technique. How could he survive? This happened 13 years ago. At that time, everyone in the Divine Land knew about it. However, today many people have forgotten about this. Instead, they are all praising the dual-pupiled person, Shi Tianyi. He was like a god descending to the mortal world, with unparalleled talent. In fact, his talent was already extraordinary, and he also obtained your grandson's supreme Taoist root. With the combination of the two, he was naturally unparalleled in the world. Everyone is sighing that the Shi clan made a good deal by concentrating all their resources on one person. And in the end, they created the strongest genius of the younger generation in the human cultivation world." Slowly, Shi Zhongtian said, "There are many secrets that cannot be known by everyone in the world like you said. I'm afraid that even many people in the Shi clan don't know about it. How do you know about it so clearly?" The black-robed man glanced at Shi Zhongtian and said indifferently, "Oh, that's because when you transferred your grandson's Taoist root, we helped Shi Tianyi to complete this task." Silently, Shi Zhongtian stood in the void with an expressionless face. His whole body was motionless, like a statue. However, everyone could feel the surging waves of mana around his body, like a volcano that was about to erupt. Although it had not really erupted, the destructive aura had already spread out. The 3 black-robed men looked at each other and nodded slightly. Shi Zhongtian had a fortuitous encounter in the void battlefield. Not only did he break through the bottleneck that he had been facing for a long time, he successfully took the last step from the late stage of the Yuanying stage to the primordial soul realm. And he also gained other benefits. He was already very talented in battle, and his combat ability was far beyond that of ordinary people. When he was still in the Yuanying stage, not only did he look down on everyone in the Shi clan, except for the clan leader Shi Wu, he was also very famous in the entire Great Qin dynasty, and there were few people below the primordial soul realm who could be his match. Now that he had reached the primordial soul realm and had a fortuitous encounter, Shi Zhongtian's strength had reached an astonishing level. In the void battlefield, the 3 black-robed primordial soul realm experts had fought with him. In a one-on-one situation, none of them was a match for Shi Zhongtian. One of them was even almost killed by Shi Zhongtian and died on the spot. The 3 black-robed men worked together and used the power of 2 magic treasures to force Shi Zhongtian to escape. Then they chased after him. The 3 black-robed men clearly knew the strength of their opponent. They also knew that the angrier Shi Zhongtian was, the more powerful his strength would be. However, they still wanted to anger Shi Zhongtian so that he would not escape. Although Shi Zhongtian was strong, they had ways to restrain him. In comparison, Shi Zhongtian's increased fighting power, due to his anger, was negligible. After all, their goal was to capture Shi Zhongtian alive, not to kill him completely. This was much more difficult, especially if Shi Zhongtian wanted to escape. It would be even more difficult. When we attack, one of us will temporarily hold him back, and another will activate the soul-shocking bell to destroy his primordial soul incarnation and spiritual will. The last one will use the soul-calming bell to suppress him. The three black-robed men communicated silently and quickly decided on a strategy. There were also some black-robed men who followed them in. They were all in the yuanying stage and could not directly participate in the battle to capture Shi Zhongtian. They all spread out and formed a formation to further trap Shi Zhongtian, acting as the second line of defense. Just as they were preparing, the old man whom they had set their sights on suddenly laughed. "You are lying to me," Shi Zhongtian said calmly. The black-robed man frowned slightly. Although the mana around Shi Zhongtian's body was surging, his expression was calm. "My Hauer may have met with a disaster as you said, but he is definitely safe now. Not only is he not dead, but he has also become very powerful. Or rather, he has a very powerful person protecting him. He is so powerful that you don't dare to fight him directly. That's why you are targeting me." The old man's long hair fluttered in the wind. "I don't know who you are, but looking at your skills, you are similar to the legendary ancient king of the underworld. I have been in the void battlefield for so many years, and I have met people like you. Their cultivation levels may be high or low, but they all do the same thing, which is to collect extraordinarily powerful spirits. Although I have reached the primordial soul realm, among the cultivators of the same realm, my forte is not my spirit. There is no need for you to capture me. If you are here to kill me on behalf of Shi Tianyi and his people, it is understandable. However, you are trying so hard to capture me alive. You can only use me to threaten others." Shi Zhongtian's cold eyes scanned the three messengers of the underworld hall. His voice was still calm. "Who are you trying to use me as a hostage to threaten?" The three black-robed men fell silent. Shi Zhongtian was powerful, straightforward and hot-tempered, but his mind was very flexible. "Haha, it seems that my Hauer is in a good situation." Shi Zhongtian laughed again. "I have already reached the primordial soul realm, but I am still being used as a hostage. How powerful is the person you want to threaten? The Tempest Temple has been destroyed. Is it Shu Mountain? Or is it His Majesty the Emperor of Qin, who is taking care of Hauer personally? Could it be the Taishu Temple? It can't be the Great Zhou Dynasty, right?" Shi Zhongtian glanced at them. "Judging from your expressions, it is not the case. Could it be that other experts have risen in the vast thousand world in the past 10 years? The leader of the black-robed men said. "There is no point in talking too much. Follow us and you will know." As they spoke, the three black-robed men made hand signs at the same time. Three colorful giant vortexes appeared in the sky and connected together. They covered a radius of thousands of miles and shrouded the top of Shi Zhongtian's head. "You want to capture me? Now I want to capture one of you so that I can ask you about how." Shi Zhongtian shouted loudly. He immediately took off his human form and displayed his primordial soul incarnation. He transformed into a giant white dragon that was surrounded by black gas and flew across the sky. The Shi clan's core Dao technique, the Great White Dragon technique, was a giant white dragon that was cultivated to the primordial soul incarnation. However, when Shi Zhongtian revealed his primordial soul incarnation, it was obviously different. Streams of black smoke circled around the white dragon's body. From the black smoke, blood-red light shot out continuously. It was extremely imposing. The three of them displayed the soul-assimilating vortex together, but they could not do anything to Shi Zhongtian. Instead, he tore a corner of the vortex apart. Immediately after, he transformed into a stream of light and pounced in front of one of the black-robed men. The mystic heaven realm was vast, but the spiritual power fluctuations from the battle between the primordial soul realm experts still alarmed Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, and the others who were on the other side of the world. Shi Tianhao looked in the direction of the spiritual power, with a slightly dazed expression. According to the spatial fluctuations, a new realm passageway has been opened at the last minute. Master's prediction has come true. Zhu Yi turned to look at Shi Tianhao and asked, "Do you know them?" Shi Tianhao shook his head and was slightly at a loss. "I don't know them, but I have a strange feeling." One of them is from the underworld hall. Wang Lin's gaze was cold as he said in a deep voice. Zhu Yi said, "Let's go and take a look. Although they are primordial soul realm experts, we have master's magic treasures with us. We can protect ourselves." Everyone nodded in unison. Without saying anything, Shi Tianhao rushed out first. Chapter 625. After entering the Heaven Mystic Realm, although Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others were eager to explore this unknown world, they did not split up for the sake of caution. Instead, they moved forward together. After a period of investigation, they could confirm that the total amount of spiritual energy in the Heaven Mystic Realm was not particularly abundant. It was roughly the same as the overall situation of the vast 1,000 domains in the outside world. It was not comparable to Yujing Mountain, Baiyun Mountain, Shu Mountain, West Hill City, and Tianjing City. However, there were a few places in this dimensional realm where a large amount of spiritual energy was gathered and many precious treasures of heaven and earth were born. The water marrow crystal vein was just one of them, and it was not even the most precious thing in the Heaven Mystic Realm. A dimensional realm that had never been developed by anyone and all resources had not been consumed. No matter how barren it was, there were still many good things to be found. In particular, there were no established groups of natives here, so it was even more impossible for them to consume the world's resources. When Shi Tianhao and the others were about to go deeper, they suddenly felt a fluctuation in the domain power of the world. It seemed that a hole had appeared somewhere. This meant that another domain passage had appeared in the Heaven Mystic Realm, to connect to the outside world. Immediately after, there was a powerful fluctuation of magic power. It was a violent movement that could only be caused by a battle between primordial spirit experts. The brothers immediately went to the site of the incident. At the same time, they passed on the situation to Zen Master Dade, who was guarding outside, and reported it to Lin Feng, who was far away in Yujing Mountain. Tianhao felt something was wrong. After receiving Zhu Yi's voice transmission, Lin Feng did not particularly care about the people of the underworld hall. Instead, he was interested in the person who had caused Shi Tianhao to feel strange. Well, maybe it's a blessing and not a curse. Lin Feng thought for a moment and said, "Just deal with it properly." After cutting off the communication with Lin Feng, Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, and the others flew through space, crossed the Heaven Mystic Realm, and arrived at the edge of the battlefield on the other side of the world. At this moment, the battle was already white-hot. The three emissaries of Nether Hall had also shed their human forms and revealed their nascent spirit avatars. They were existences that looked like wheels. As the wheels spun, it was like the cycle of life and death, the cycle of yin and yang. A deathly aura came from the depths of the roulette, as if it was the netherworld. Rays of gray light shot out from the three wheels, intertwining between heaven and earth, dyeing the sky within a radius of 10 million miles gray. In the gray world, a small copper bell floated in the air, ringing non-stop. With the copper bell as the center, colorful ripples spread out in all directions. Even from far away, Yang Qing's complexion paled slightly when she heard the ringing of the copper bell. She groaned and felt dizzy. He only felt that the top of his head was beating incessantly, as if his divine soul would lose control at any time and leave his body. Zhu Yi and the others didn't look too good either. They looked up at the copper bell and said, "It's a Dharma treasure." They were still on the periphery, and were not the target of the copper bell's conscious attack. They all felt waves of discomfort. At this moment, under the gray sky, a giant white dragon surrounded by black smoke was facing the sharp edge of this Dharma treasure, the soul-shocking bell. The soul-shocking bell was a Dharma treasure refined using a secret method of the Nether Hall. When the bell rang, it would shake the heavens and the earth, directly shattering the divine soul of others. Its attack range was extremely wide, and it was a very sharp Dharma treasure. After being refined for a long time, it had shattered the divine souls of countless powerhouses, leaving only an empty shell. The true power of this treasure did not lie in the sound of the bell, but in the transmission of the sound of the bell, which was like ripples in water that spread in all directions. Wherever the five-colored light passed, heaven and earth trembled as if it was being purified. However, the giant white dragon was really fierce, especially the black smoke surrounding its body. It was strange and overbearing, and it did not shatter the five-colored light. The black smoke entangled the five-colored light. The giant white dragon waved its claws, and a few rays of platinum light flashed. Like a peerless divine weapon, it directly cut a crack in the void and clawed at the five-colored light that was attacking it. In the gray sky, dark light constantly fell like chains, trying to bind the giant white dragon. It coordinated with the soul-shocking bell's Dharma power attack. The three essence soul powerhouses attacked together, and with a rather sharp Dharma treasure, it immediately put a lot of pressure on the giant white dragon. Golden light and black smoke flashed all over its body, attacking and defending at the same time. It constantly broke the gray light that seemed to come from the abyss of hell, and destroyed the five-colored light released by the soul-shocking bell. Even in the face of so many enemies, the giant white dragon was still calm and fearless. With a loud roar, it opened its mouth and spat out a jet-black iron awl. This was a treasure that it had obtained from the void battlefield. As soon as the iron awl appeared, an extremely ferocious bloody aura spread out. Endless black smoke spewed out from it, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a large black sea of clouds, hiding the giant white dragon within. The black smoke that lingered on the white dragon's body clearly came from the same source as the iron awl. The two fused together, and its momentum became even greater. As soon as the black smoke that covered the sky appeared, it immediately caused the already dark sky to be completely dark, as if it had fallen into night. Within the black smoke, crimson light constantly flashed, as if blood-red lightning streaked across the sky, tearing the void apart. The gray light that fell from the sky and the five-colored light from the soul-shocking bell became denser and denser. They covered the sky and the earth, eroding the black smoke and constantly brushing it off. However, the three Underworld Hall emissaries could not be happy at this time, because they could clearly feel that an extremely terrifying power was being nurtured in the black smoke. The gray light intertwined with each other, and the light and shadow constantly changed, completely turning into an illusory world. The scene inside was bizarre and dazzling, and all kinds of things were born from it. However, it was lifeless, eerie, and terrifying. This gray world was incomparably huge, and it was rapidly devouring the heaven mystic realm's spirit energy. The boundary between the two worlds kept distorting, and the gray world actually began to erode and blur the heaven mystic realm's boundary power, as if it was going to drag the entire heaven mystic realm into it. Shi Tianhao and the others looked up, and saw that there seemed to be billions of figures in the gray world. However, they were not living people, but soul spirits. The gray world was like a monster with its mouth wide open, swallowing the black smoke in clouds that spanned thousands of miles in one gulp. When Shi Tianhao saw this scene, his heart suddenly tightened for no reason. However, the situation quickly changed again. The gray world suddenly distorted violently, and the next moment, countless mournful crimson light shot out from it and scattered in all directions. The gray world was like a broken water bag that had countless holes, and the water inside it kept spurting out of the holes. At this moment, the gray world finally could not bear it anymore, and it suddenly collapsed. The white light dragon rushed out of it with a roar, and the jet-black iron all hovered above his head. Blood-red lightning bolts shot out, and they rumbled with thunder. He directly rushed to the wheel formed by the soul-shocking bell of one of the Underworld Hall messengers. The iron awl and the crimson light blocked the soul-shocking bell, and he reached out with his giant claws to grab the wheel. The flashing golden light kept cutting the wheel, and in the blink of an eye, the wheel was already riddled with marks and was about to shatter. However, at this moment, a rusty ancient brass bell appeared above the person's head. Immediately, a powerful force that could suppress all things and freeze everything fell on the head of the white light dragon. At this moment, the other two messengers of the Underworld Hall also attacked from behind. The white light dragon let out a long roar, and blood-red lightning bolts also erupted from his body, wrapping around his huge body, making him look like a scarlet blood dragon. A series of thunderous explosions almost completely destroyed this part of the world. He forcefully broke through the seal of the soul-suppressing bell above his head, and before the other two messengers of the Underworld Hall could reach him, he grabbed the wheel formed by the soul-shocking bell of the third Underworld Hall messenger, and instantly escaped thousands of miles away. Loud laughter came from heaven and earth. I said that I would capture one of you alive and interrogate him about how the underworld hall messenger that he had captured revealed his human form. His face was livid, and he felt extremely humiliated. The remaining two people also had gloomy expressions. Although they controlled the soul-shocking bell and the soul-suppressing bell, they did not have the confidence to fight against the white light dragon with the jet-black iron all above his head. In the distant sky, Yang Qing saw this scene and murmured, "So powerful. Not only is he not defeated when facing the joint attack of 3 experts of the same cultivation level, but he can even capture one of them alive. And he even has 2 spirit-nurturing grade treasures that are equivalent to 2 soul-shocking bell experts." She swallowed her saliva and did not say anything. Zhu Yi and Wang Lin nodded together. He is indeed extraordinary. Previously, I did not want to waste time with you because I wanted to rush back to see my family. You have underestimated me. The white light dragon laughed and said, "Now tell me, how is my grandson?" In the void battlefield, Shi Zhongtian was in a hurry to escape, and did not want to fight to the death, so he did not even use the jet black iron all. At this moment, he went all out and displayed his true strength. His soul-shocking bell, the white light dragon, had also been injured in the battle just now. Defeating, killing, and capturing alive represented completely different levels of difficulty. Capturing someone alive while being surrounded by enemies was even more difficult. However, even if he was outnumbered, if he said he would capture the other party alive, then he would capture the other party alive. This was because he wanted to know from the other party what was going on with his grandson, son, and daughter-in-law, whom he had missed for many years. However, what happened next shocked him. The 2 messengers of the underworld hall looked into the distance at the same time, and actually turned around to leave without saying a word. In the distance, there were a few Yuanying cultivators of unknown origins. Shi Zhongtian naturally knew about them, but he was surrounded by enemies and had to be careful of the enemies in front of him first. At this moment, he was stunned and could not help but carefully size up the people in the distance. Yes, it was a pure-blooded Taotai. It was a pity that the Taotai bloodline could not nourish humans, otherwise he could also beat it to nourish his grandson. The few human lads were all very young. There were 3 Yuanying cultivators and 1 golden elixir cultivator. It was really rare to have such a cultivation level at this age. He had lived for many years and had not seen many, especially one of the youths. His real age was probably only 13 or 14 years old, but he had actually formed his nascent soul. This was simply unheard of, let alone seen. Yes, he was quite handsome. Those eyebrows, those eyes, and that nose, they were the same as when this old man was young. Shi Zhongtian suddenly widened his eyes. In the distance, Shi Tianhao was also staring at him in a daze. Unknowingly, Shi Zhongtian had already taken off the form of the white light dragon's soul-shocking bell, and changed back to his human form. Only his right hand was still in the form of a huge dragon claw, and he was tightly grabbing a black-robed man. The old and the young stared at each other for a long time, and the world fell into a strange silence. Chapter 626. Although this was the first time they had met, Shi Tianhao and Shi Zhongtian could feel their blood connection at the same time. This made them believe that the person in front of them was their closest relative. However, it was also because this was the first time they had met each other unprepared that the grandfather and grandson were momentarily stunned. Shi Zhongtian opened his mouth and carefully sized up little stone in front of him. He said hesitantly, "You young man, what's your name?" The old man, who was still full of heroic spirit in the face of a group of enemies, seemed a little nervous at this moment. Although he sensed that the envoy of the underworld hall was deceiving him, he felt that the other party's words were not entirely lies. There should be some truth in it. For example, that little brat Shi Tianyi might really plot to snatch his grandson's supreme Dao foundation. Even if his grandson had turned misfortune into fortune, he was still very worried about the specific situation and urgently wanted to understand it. That was why he took the risk to capture an envoy of the underworld hall. Facing 3 people and 2 treasures at the same time, Shi Zhongtian was actually under a lot of pressure. If he really fought to the death, he would also be in danger of dying. After all, the king of the underworld's orthodoxy was mysterious and strange, and the individual strength of these underworld hall envoys surpassed that of ordinary cultivators of the same realm. After capturing one of the opponents, Shi Zhongtian was actually constantly paying attention to the movements of the other two and prepared to deal with their counterattack. It was even more difficult to suppress an essence soul expert and fight with the other two at the same time. Shi Zhongtian had already thought it through. If he really couldn't do it, he would find a chance to escape. At most, he would find an opportunity to settle the score with these people of the underworld hall after interrogating the prisoner and confirming his grandson's situation. However, he did not expect that the two underworld hall envoys would choose to retreat without fighting after seeing Shi Tianhao and the others. Only then did Shi Zhongtian focus his attention on Shi Tianhao and the others. In the end, when his gaze landed on Little Stone, he immediately could not look away. Shi Tianhao looked at the sloppy but heroic old man in front of him, and his dull eyes finally regained some vitality. He took a deep breath and said softly, "I'm Shi Tianhao. Are you Shi Zhongtian?" Shi Zhongtian's eyes widened again. After a while he chuckled and his laughter shook the sky. Not bad, not bad. I'm Shi Zhongtian." After laughing, the old man's expression became much gentler. "Are you my Hao?" He scrutinized Shi Tianhao from head to toe, clicking his tongue in admiration. This physique, this realm, this magic power. When your father was your age, when I was your age, I wasn't this strong. All right. Good. Good. My grandson has grown into an incomparably powerful person. No one can bully you. Good. Shi Zhongtian pinched the captured emissary of the underworld hall with his right hand and laughed. You're indeed full of nonsense. My Hao is standing right here. Open your dog eyes wide and take a good look. He quickly took out the white jade box and said to Shi Tianhao, Hao, this is the cloudy spirit fruit from the void battlefield. Although you've formed your nascent soul now, it's still effective. Shi Zhongtian looked at Shi Tianhao in front of him with endless joy in his heart. Back then, he entered the void battlefield to look for treasures for his newborn grandson. In the end, he was trapped there for many years and couldn't get out. Although it was a blessing in disguise and he achieved the primordial soul state, the old man's greatest wish was to be able to return to his family and reunite with his children and grandchildren. Now that he suddenly met his grandson, who had grown up, he was happy but also a little lost. Shi Tianhao looked at the old man in front of him, who was sometimes heroic and sometimes slightly clumsy. He felt a little sour in his heart. In his memory, he had never seen his grandfather's appearance. He only knew that there was such a person. After he was born, his grandfather went into the void battlefield and never came back in order to find treasures for him. His parents were also trapped in the void battlefield because they were looking for the old man. That was why he was plotted against by Shi Tianyi and his mother. However, Shi Tianhao wouldn't blame his grandfather. Although the old man in front of him had achieved the primordial soul state, his face was full of hardships. He had wandered alone in the dangerous void battlefield for many years, and it was all because of him. Although Shi Tianhao didn't understand why Shi Zhongtian started a war with the people from the underworld hall, after hearing his grandfather capture his opponents, he asked about his whereabouts first. Shi Tianhao also knew that his grandfather fought a group of strong enemies and captured them alive without any regard for his own safety. This was actually related to him. Shi Tianyi was killed by his own hands, the Yu clan was destroyed, and the Shi clan was changed. He had avenged all his grievances. At this moment, Shi Tianhao's goal was to reunite with his family, apart from his master. Looking at the old man in front of him who was full of joy but also at a loss of what to do, who wanted to get close to his grandson but didn't know what to do, Shi Tianhao couldn't help but laugh. Shi Zhongtian was surprised and at a loss. Wasn't he also the same? This old man, whom he had only heard of before, was his closest relative and had even made him suffer a lot. Shi Tianhao also didn't know how to get along with him. On the contrary, the common awkwardness made little Shi Tu feel closer to the old man. Seeing his smile, Shi Zhongtian seemed to feel his grandson's mood, and suddenly felt that it was funny. A smile appeared on his unshaven face. Little brat, did I scare you? Shi Tianhao laughed. I'm your grandson. How can I be scared so easily? Shi Zhongtian laughed. You're right. Grandfather. The smile on Shi Tianhao's face gradually faded, and tears welled up in his eyes. The conversation just now was like a broken dam, allowing him to finally have a place to vent the emotions that had been accumulating for a long time. Thus, it gradually got out of hand. Shi Zhongtian opened his mouth and suddenly had the urge to cry. "Oh, my how," he shook his head hard and raised his head. He murmured, "It's too ugly. How can I cry? I can't cry, I can't cry." Looking at Shi Tianhao, who was slowly kneeling in front of him, Shi Zhongtian took a deep breath. However, his tears still flowed down uncontrollably. "I can't cry, I can't cry. Damn it, I can't cry. My grandson is alive and has grown up. I'm happy. Why can't I cry?" Shi Tianhao raised his head and the grandfather and grandson looked at each other. They were both crying and laughing at the same time. They finally stopped crying and looked at each other's embarrassing appearance. They couldn't help but laugh even harder. Shi Tianhao made a face at his grandfather. "Grandfather, it seems that you didn't scare me. I scared you instead. How is that possible?" Shi Zhongtian stared at him and suddenly thought of something. He couldn't help but laugh again. "I'm your grandfather. How can I be scared so easily?" Hearing these familiar words, the grandfather and grandson looked at each other and laughed. They seemed to be praising each other, but in fact, they were both confident and complacent. They were carved from the same mold. "How, are the people who came with you your companions or fellow disciples?" Although Shi Zhongtian was extremely happy, he quickly calmed down and looked into the distance. Although he was excited to see his grandson, who he had been thinking about day and night, it wouldn't erase his most basic vigilance. He had been vigilant towards the underworld hall emissaries who had retreated, but the development of the situation surprised him. He didn't need to mention that Shi Tianhao had reunited with him. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin and the others naturally wouldn't disturb them, but they also wouldn't let the underworld hall emissaries go and intercept them. Zhu Yi, Wang Lin and Tuntin were 3 Yuanying stage experts, while Yang Qing was only at the golden elixir stage. It seemed like they were overestimating themselves to intercept and kill the underworld hall emissaries led by 2 primordial soul stage experts. They were traveling with Shi Tianhao, so Shi Zhongtian naturally wouldn't ignore them. While talking to Shi Tianhao, he was also paying attention to the underworld hall emissaries. But in the end, Zhu Yi and the others really intercepted the group of underworld hall emissaries. Zhu Yi and Wang Lin were the main force. Zhu Yi revealed the Paragon Saint Ancient Robe and the Eternal Night Devil Steel, 2 great transformation-grade magic treasures. Although he couldn't display the full power of the magic treasures, the underworld hall emissaries couldn't do anything to him for the time being. Wang Lin was even more straightforward. With a wave of the Xiantian God Sealing Flag, he released Chao Wei's Essence Soul Avatar. Although he was restrained by the Xiantian God Sealing Flag, Chao Wei's divine powers and dermic powers remained intact. His thoughts were clear and agile. He had the combat strength of a First Firmament Essence Soul Realm expert. The 2 underworld hall emissaries had the help of the Spirit Stunning Bell and the Soul Suppressing Bell respectively. Moreover, they could display the full power of the magic treasures. Zhu Yi, who was only at the early Yuanying stage, and Chao Wei's primordial spirit avatar, who didn't have any magic treasures, were ultimately at a disadvantage. After all, the primordial spirit and the primordial spirit avatar with magic treasures were 2 completely different concepts. But the underworld hall emissaries wouldn't be able to escape for a while. Tuntin and Yang Qing attacked the Yuanying underworld hall emissaries. They didn't aim to kill them, but they wanted to make it difficult for them to escape. Xianmen Tianzong and a group of disciples blocked the domain passage from the Xiantian realm to the outer space battlefield, clearly intending to make the underworld hall emissaries stay here forever. Although they are relying on magic treasures, it's really not easy for them to fight with primordial spirit experts at the early Yuanying stage. Shi Zhongtian smacked his lips. If it were someone else, their magic treasures would have been snatched away by a primordial spirit expert. More importantly, the muscles on Shi Zhongtian's face twitched. Not all primordial spirit experts have their own magic treasures. Who in the world is so wealthy to be able to give a magic treasure to a nascent soul disciple? Taishu Temple? That's not right. The cultivation methods of these people aren't the same as those of Taishu Temple. Shi Tianhao pursed his lips. Grandpa, don't mention Taishu Temple. Let them go to hell. Old Master sure didn't care much about his grandson's criticism of the world's #1 sacred land. He turned to look at Shi Tianhao. How? Are they all from your sect? How powerful must your master be? Shi Tianhao smiled and said, You'll be able to see it very soon. Speaking of how I became a disciple of Master, it's a long story. Even 3 days and 3 nights won't be enough to finish it. I'll tell you about it slowly. As he spoke, Shi Tianhao let out a soft shout. Golden light surged above his head, and Kunpeng Palace flew out and smashed down on the Underworld Hall emissaries. The eyes of the 2 Underworld Hall emissaries flashed with hostility. I ignored you because I don't want to fight with your master now. A few yuanying brats. Do you really think you can overturn the heavens with your magic treasures? Do you think I'm afraid of you if I don't teach you a lesson? The 2 emissaries' magic power exploded. The soul-frightening bell and soul-suppressing bell also unleashed their shocking magic power. The 2 emissaries and 2 treasures were equivalent to 4 primordial spirit experts working together. In an instant, Chao Wei's primordial spirit, the eternal night devil steel, and Kunpeng Palace were all blasted away. Chapter 627. The 2 Underworld Hall messengers spoke fiercely, but they only wanted to force Shi Tianhao and the others to retreat, so that they could escape. Putting aside the fact that they didn't want to clash with Lin Feng head-on, Shi Zhongtian alone gave them a great deal of pressure. Although Shi Zhongtian was strong, he didn't have many ways to deal with them if they wanted to escape. He was able to capture one of them alive earlier because no one tried to escape. However, if Shi Tianhao and the others helped them from the side and cut off their escape route, they would really be in trouble if Shi Zhongtian joined the battle. The power of the soul-suppressing bell and soul bell was activated to the extreme. Even their Yuan spirit incarnations appeared, forcing Kunpeng Hall and the eternal night devil steel to retreat. Chao Wei's Yuan spirit incarnation was also forced to retreat. The group of Underworld Hall messengers immediately rushed towards the realm passage and entered the void battlefield. However, Shi Zhongtian also joined the battle. Amidst the black smoke, golden light flashed and cut through the void. Blood-colored lightning bolts exploded one after another, blocking the Underworld Hall messengers' path. Shi Zhongtian, you're courting death. One of the Underworld Hall messengers shouted angrily. The wheel of life and death formed by his Yuan spirit incarnation suddenly rotated, and his supernatural power was activated to the extreme. It turned into a gray world of death. Clouds of unknown chaotic gas gushed out from the gray world and shrouded Shi Zhongtian like a thick fog. When the black smoke and golden light around Shi Zhongtian came into contact with the chaotic fog, they started to decay as if they were deprived of life and were about to die. This was the extremely condensed chaotic death qi that could even deprive a primordial spirit expert of his life force. Wang Lin's eyes lit up when he saw this scene. His eyes flickered as if he had learned something. Shi Zhongtian was fearless in the face of this chaotic death qi. Golden light rumbled and turned into lightning. The lightning merged with the black smoke and immediately turned from golden to blood red. It was even more violent and ferocious. The blood red lightning exploded with a loud rumble, instantly destroying the mass of chaotic death qi. However, the spiritual energy flow in this world is very primitive. It doesn't seem to be developed yet. Apart from you, has anyone else discovered this place? Shi Zhongtian tilted his head and asked his grandson. Shi Tianhao immediately answered. We were the first to discover this place. My master named this place the Mystic Heaven Realm. You and these Underworld Hall cultivators should be the second batch to arrive here. Shi Zhongtian nodded. Then all the more we can't let them leave. Otherwise, the news will be leaked. As he spoke, Shi Zhongtian let out a long howl, and once again took out his jet black iron awl. It transformed into a bolt of lightning that flickered with a bloody light as it tore through the sky with a loud rumble, and struck the soul-suppressing bell above the emissary's head. There was a buzzing sound, but it was not clear. Instead, it was so heavy that it made people panic. Then, they saw a crack appear on the soul-suppressing bell. It was a ghastly sight. A shrill roar came from the soul-suppressing bell, and a mixture of shock and anger came from it. It was the soul-suppressing bell's magic treasure primordial spirit. Shi Zhongtian did not continue after his successful attack. Instead, he frowned slightly and turned to look at the domain channel in the sky that led to the battlefield of the void. A torrential river of blood suddenly gushed out from the passageway. Rumble, 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 rumble. The blood-red river roared and surged. It was dark and gloomy, and it emitted a nauseating stench. Just smelling this stench made people feel that it was difficult to circulate their magic power. Shi Zhongtian's gaze froze. It's the genuine true blood river water. Legend had it that in the netherworld, there was a nether blood river. It was endless and boundless, and it was filled with filthy blood. It was known as the true blood river water. The true blood river water was one of the 6 great true waters of the world. It was also the most evil and filthy water. It was the most filthy thing in the world. No matter how powerful a supernatural power or how magical a magic tool was, as long as it came into contact with a little of it, it would immediately be polluted and lose its magic power. If a cultivator refined the true blood river water for his own use, he would undoubtedly have a great advantage when fighting against an enemy of the same realm. Looking at the intensity of the blood river, there was no doubt that it could only be refined by a primordial soul realm expert. Light and shadow floated in the blood river, and a young man slowly rose from it. He glanced at Shi Zhongtian, and then his gaze fell on Shi Tianhao and the others. Capturing Shi Zhongtian was originally for the sake of Shi Tianhao and Xianmen Tianzong. Previously, I kept a low profile because I didn't want to alarm the master of the Mystic Gate. Silently, the young man in the blood river said, "But since the matter has been exposed, there's no need to worry anymore." As he spoke, the young man gently clapped his hands, and a picture scroll floated up from the surging filthy blood river. The picture scroll also had a blood river drawn on it. The picture scroll emitted a dark light, and the blood river in the picture became reality. Thick, stinky, filthy blood flowed continuously from it, and gathered in the blood river outside. Therefore, the blood river under the young man became stronger and stronger, and its aura was monstrous. It completely turned the sky of the mystic heaven realm blood red. The young man unleashed all his magic power and magical powers, and a chaotic hole formed in the void above his head. Misty chaotic death chi gushed out from it, and he was even more terrifying than the few underworld hall emissaries. In addition to the raging blood river under his body, his magical powers were much more powerful. Although this young man was also at the primordial soul incarnation realm, his strength was so strong that even Shi Zhongtian's expression became solemn. When the 2 underworld hall emissaries saw this young man, they were first pleasantly surprised, but there was also fear in their eyes. They bowed respectfully and said, "Your subordinates greet King Qingguang." King Qingguang? Zhu Yi, Wanglin, Shi Tianhao, and Yang Qing looked at each other and said, "He's the underworld hall's branch hall master, one of the 10 kings of hell." Back when they picked up Wang Lin from the void battlefield, Lin Feng casually threw an underworld hall emissary, who tried to harm Wang Lin, onto the Xiantian God-sealing flag. After interrogating this person, they found out that the leader of the underworld hall was the underworld hall master, who was extremely powerful. Below him were the many branch hall masters, who were collectively known as the 10 kings of hell. In addition, the high-level members were a group of underworld hall emissaries. The 10 kings of hell were King Qingguang, King Chujiang, King Song, King Wuguan, King Yanluo, King Bianqing, King Taishan, King Dushi, King Pingdang, and King Zhuanluan. They were also known as the 10 kings of hell. The 10 kings of hell had different levels of cultivation, but they were all great primordial soul cultivators with powerful magical powers. The young man in front of them who controlled a blood river with an astonishing aura was King Qingguang, a rising star of the underworld hall. He cultivated the king of the underworld's orthodoxy, and had a fortuitous encounter to refine a nether blood river. Although he was only at the primordial soul incarnation realm, his magical powers were enough to look down on most experts of the same realm. This time, the operation to capture Shi Tianhao's parents and Shi Zhongtian was led by him. This person was extremely daring. Now that his plan had been exposed, he wanted to switch from a sneak attack to a direct attack. King Qingguang's gaze swept across Zhu Yi, Wanglin, Shi Tianhao, Yang Qing, and Tunten. Did the master of the celestial sect of wonders entrust his magical powers to all of you again? His expression was solemn, but he was not afraid. Shi Tianhao and the others also knew the source of his confidence, which was the true blood river water. Everything in the world had its countermeasure. Something that might not be effective in some places might have a miraculous effect when used in certain situations. The true blood river water was used to polluting magical powers and spiritual qi. Even if a person's magical powers were powerful, they were ultimately not the real person. When they encountered the true blood river water, their magical powers might be polluted, causing the magical powers to collapse, and even the true blood river water could take control of the magical powers. It wasn't that King Qin Guangwang had never done something like this before. It was just that Lin Feng's reputation was out there. His Dharma body could suppress a powerhouse of the Return to Void realm. He was ridiculously strong, so King Qin Guangwang wasn't completely confident. Fortunately, the scroll in his hand was a rather powerful magic treasure, which gave him some confidence. The torrential blood river spread out and turned into a sea of blood, surging toward everyone. It quickly polluted the spiritual qi in the heaven mystic realm. Anything that came into contact with the blood would be polluted. Everyone, I have no choice but to take action. Otherwise, his true blood river water will pollute the heaven mystic realm that belongs to our sect. At this moment, a deep voice sounded. Along with this voice, a middle-aged man in white appeared. He had a head of fiery red hair, but a pair of sword-like eyebrows were snow-white like frost. In the void behind him, a towering mountain peak that was thousands of feet tall was faintly discernible. It was snow-white and looked like ice crystals. Faint red flames could be seen jumping fiercely. Hot steam rose from the top of the mountain, thick smoke billowed, and endless blazing flames and magma spewed out. Seeing this middle-aged man in white, King Qinguang's expression changed slightly. Polar Sky Peak? Your Tianqi sect was destroyed precisely because of Xianmen Tianzong. You're actually willing to be the lackey of the master of the celestial sect? It's truly a waste of the Tianqi sect's tens of thousands of years of hard work to help you reach the Mahayana stage. This white-clothed middle-aged man with crimson hair and white eyebrows was the treasure of the Tianqi sect in the past, the Mahayana stage magic treasure Polar Sky Peak. Hearing King Qinguang's words, Feng Liangji sighed lightly. Today's misfortune and fortune are all predestined. In the past I made a decision. If I want to reap success, now I should have the courage to bear the consequences of failure. I'm indebted to the magnanimity of the master of the celestial sect for leaving behind descendants for my Tianqi sect. I'll be used by him. At this point, Feng Liangji didn't seem to be willing to continue explaining. There were many things that only Lin Feng and him knew. There was no need to spread it everywhere. He didn't say anything more and clapped his hands. The Polar Sky Peak behind him flew out of the void and directly pressed down towards King Qinguang and the Nether Blood River. As he said, he had to make a move. Otherwise, even if Shi Tianhao and the others were not afraid of King Qinguang, a large area of the Heaven Profound realm would be polluted by the Blood River True Water after a battle. This place was already regarded as Lin Feng's private property. How could he allow others to destroy it? If it was a branch hall master of the Underworld Hall, or if King Qinguang's overall strength didn't change, but he couldn't cultivate the Blood River True Water. Feng Liangji wouldn't make a move so quickly under Lin Feng's orders. Instead, he would observe from the side and give Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, Yang Qing and the others ample opportunities to gain experience. But now, in order to protect the Heaven Profound realm from being polluted by the Blood River True Water, Feng Liangji decided to make a move. King Qinguang's expression became unsightly. Although the Blood River True Water could even pollute magic treasures, the Polar Sky Peak was a Mahayana grade magic treasure. It was stronger than Lin Feng's divine ability avatar. The difference between their realms was too big. Thinking of this, King Qinguang didn't dare to hesitate. The Blood River swept up all the Underworld Hall cultivators and directly rushed towards the domain passage in the sky, wanting to return to the void battlefield. This dimensional realm has a primitive aura. There shouldn't be anyone who stepped in before. It seems like Xianmen Tianzong wants to monopolize it. King Qinguang's mind worked quickly. I don't need to fight with them here. If I spread the news, the other forces will definitely come to fight for it. At that time, there will naturally be more opportunities. Chapter 628. Qin Guangwang had a good idea, but Feng Liangji didn't give him the chance. The two poles sky peak retreated, instantly blocking the realm passage to the void battlefield. As the two poles sky peak shook, it instantly turned the void around it into a world of ice and fire. Within the glacier, countless raging flames surged non-stop, instantly turning the vast sky into a sea of fire. The raging flames incessantly burned the tainted True Blood River water. Black smoke filled the air. The nauseating stench disappeared. Only a thick burnt smell was left in the air. There were also flames and glaciers that were contaminated by the tainted blood, losing their spirituality, and even counterattacking under the control of the True Blood River water, instead attacking towards the two poles sky peak. But the difference in the overall situation between the two sides was still too big. The torrential blood river was incessantly burned and evaporated, the scale becoming smaller and smaller. Qin Guangwang sighed. He controlled the blood river to suddenly change direction, and instead charged towards Shi Tianhao and the rest. Unable to do anything to Feng Liangji, he could only find another breakthrough point. Feng Liangji stood at the top of the mountain. He had actually been paying close attention to Qin Guangwang's movements. Seeing the situation, he immediately waved his hand and shot out a talisman. Clouds of purple gas gushed out in the sky, transforming into a small world, enveloping Qin Guangwang along with the Nether Blood River. Qin Guangwang's face instantly darkened, because he felt that he had fallen into the small world of purple gas. His mana connection with the outside world was actually cut off. The current him couldn't even use mana to transmit his voice. Qin Guangwang used his own mana and True Blood River water to attack the small world of purple gas, but it was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. The mana that formed this small world of purple gas looked ordinary, but it was profound and profound. The mana formed a unique formation pattern as it flowed. Even the True Blood River water, that could normally pollute other people's mana and spiritual energy, was helpless against it. As the pattern flickered, layers of space densely covered and folded together, like a layer of sparkling barrier, isolating the True Blood River water outside, unable to truly come into contact with the small world formed by purple gas. This was the seal formed after Lin Feng combined his small world of heavens and heaven's realm barrier. If it was a Dharmakaya, Qin Guangwang might have a chance to fight with the Blood River True Water. But now, the two spells and Dharmakaya existed to seal him, which happened to be able to restrain him. Lin Feng was not a prophet. He knew that the invading enemy had the True Blood River water, but he had considered all kinds of situations and made ample preparations, leaving Qin Guangwang at a loss. The master of the celestial sect of wonders lives up to his reputation. Qin Guangwang's mouth was slightly bitter. In fact, to be honest, he was least afraid of being suppressed and sealed by others, even if it was Lin Feng's spell. Such a suppression, even if it was other transformation-grade magic treasures or powerhouses of the Void Return realm, they would not be able to break free. But if Qin Guangwang controls this abundant Nether Blood River in his hands, and spends some time patiently corroding it, it is possible to break out of the seal. It's just that he didn't know how long that would take. In such a long time, if he was handed over to Lin Feng by Feng Biangji himself, he still had no chance of escaping. Qin Guangwang sighed and began to use the True Blood River water to break Lin Feng's spell suppression. While working hard, he prayed in his heart that it would not be delivered to Lin Feng's hands in a short period of time. The small world of heavens moved through the void, its external volume continuously shrinking, finally turning into a ball of purple gas the size of a normal person's fist. The purple aura landed on Feng Liangji's palms. He nodded at Zhu Yi and the others. Under the sect master's orders, I'll be guarding the realm passageway here. One of you will send these underworld hall cultivators back to Jade Capital Mountain. Zhu Yi and the others looked at each other. Wang Lin slowly said, I will go. Feng Biangji spread out his palm. The purple gas floated in front of Wang Lin, under Wang Lin's hand. Zhu Yi looked towards him. Be careful on the road. Wang Lin nodded. Don't worry, second senior brother, I will be careful. The whereabouts of the underworld hall cultivator, who killed his kin, and caused him to lose his original physical body was still not found. Since this Qin Guangwang was the master of the underworld hall's branch hall, a high-level figure, Wang Lin hoped to be able to find out what he wanted to know from him. Shi Zhongtian smiled. Bring this as well. After saying that, he suppressed the primordial spirit of the underworld hall emissary he had captured, and also handed it to Wang Lin. After Feng Biangji handed the seal of the small world of heavens to Wang Lin, he nodded towards everyone, and did not say anything more. His figure disappeared, merging with Feng Biangji Heavenly Peak. The huge ice mountain was suspended in the sky, blocking the domain passage leading to the void battlefield. The dense cold air kept spreading, and actually froze the huge gap that the domain force had created. It looked as if the domain passage had disappeared. Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Wang Lin, Tuntin and the others bowed towards the towering ice peak in the sky. It was not because it was a Mahayana-grade magic treasure, and its power was comparable to a primordial spirit integration expert. It was because even though the two poles sky peak came from the Celestial Pool sect, they had now joined the Celestial sect of Xian, provided for Lin Feng to refine and drive, did their best to do things, and even helped them just now, getting rid of the strong enemy, so everyone was sincerely grateful. Shi Zhongtian looked at Feng Biangji Heavenly Peak and sighed. It really is the Heavenly Pool sect's Feng Biangji Heavenly Peak. From what Qing Guangwang said just now, the Heavenly Pool sect has already been destroyed. The Heavenly Pool sect has been unjust for many times. They plotted against Xianmen Tianzong time and time again, and even angered the public. In the end, they were kicked by everyone when they were down. Shi Tianhao glanced at Feng Biangji Heavenly Peak and explained, Master seems to have made some sort of agreement with Feng Biangji Heavenly Peak. Feng Biangji Heavenly Peak was willing to be refined by my master, and become a magic treasure of Xianmen Tianzong, but I don't know the details. Shi Zhongtian nodded with an interested expression. How, or tell me, what kind of person is your master? The Celestial Pool sect was a sect that was even more powerful than his Shi family. It had dominated the northern lands for 10,000 years, and the Twin Poles Sky Mountains were a Dharma treasure at the Mahayana grade. Its strength was equivalent to a third-tier essence soul realm expert, a Dao integration realm expert. Grandpa, don't worry. It's a long story. As Shi Tianhao smiled, he told him everything that had happened in the outside world since Shi Zhongtian entered the void battlefield. Shi Zhongtian was dumbfounded, and could not come back to his senses for a long time. As Shi Tianhao spoke, his emotions kept changing. When he heard that his son and daughter-in-law had been forced to place their grandson in someone else's house, and enter the void battlefield to look for him because of his disappearance, the old man was sad and angry. When he heard that Shi Tianhao had become Lin Feng's disciple, and had grown all the way, he was grateful and gratified. When he heard that his son and daughter-in-law had finally come out of the void battlefield, but had to return to the void battlefield again because of the Shi clan and Yu clan's encirclement, Shi Zhongtian was furious. He wanted to kill his way back to West Hill City and teach them a lesson. When Shi Tianhao was in closed-door training, Lin Feng and Xiao Yan, the master and disciple duo, razed the Yu family to the ground. Even the family head Yu Xintao was bound to the mysterious sky god sealing flag. Hearing up to hear, the old man clapped his hands and cheered loudly. When he heard that Shi Tianhao had killed Shi Tianyi in front of everyone, and took back the divine light of creation that belonged to him, Shi Zhongtian was even happier. He laughed and said, Good. That's great. Whoever owes justice must pay for it. There's nothing better than or taking revenge with his own hands. After that, Shi Tianhao described the earth-shattering battle between Lin Feng and Xian Longsheng, Kuang Heng and Xianlin Taoist. Shi Zhongtian was fascinated. Your teacher is really a person with great magical power. I admire him. I really admire him. I was trapped in a dangerous place in the void battlefield, and couldn't escape for hundreds of years. I couldn't come into contact with anyone either. Otherwise, I might have been able to find out about this if I'd met someone who came in later. Shi Zhongtian's expression darkened after his laughter. We're finally reunited, but my violet grave, your father, and your mother are still lost in the void battlefield. Shi Tianhao's smile disappeared as well. He couldn't help but look in the direction of the Twin Peaks. The realm passage there had been blocked led to the void battlefield. His parents were there, but they were nowhere to be found. Father, mother. Shi Tianhao's eyes went blank for a moment. Reuniting with his grandfather was a joy to him, but it also made him miss his parents even more. Shi Zhongtian said, "After visiting your master, I'll enter the void battlefield again to look for Violet Grave and the others." Seeing that Shi Tianhao wanted to say something, Shi Zhongtian smiled. "Don't worry, Hao. I've become a nascent spirit cultivator now. I won't risk my life again if I'm careful." Shi Tianhao smiled in embarrassment. It wasn't easy for him to reunite with his family, so he didn't want to lose them again. How could Shi Zhongtian want to be separated from his long-lost grandson? Though he spoke casually, the void battlefield was filled with all sorts of situations. It was a dangerous place for Yuanying and golden elixir cultivators, but even nascent spirit cultivators wouldn't be able to guarantee their own safety if they ventured in. His son and daughter-in-law were both lost inside, however. He was burning with worry and had no choice but to make this trip. "Grandfather, since the Underworld Hall is going to capture you for me, I'm sure they'll target my parents as well," Shi Tianhao said seriously. Since the Underworld Hall's sub-hall masters are called the 10 Yama Kings, there must be someone else besides King Qingguang. Shi Zhongtian nodded. He was heroic and fearless, but that didn't mean he was arrogant, reckless, and ignorant. His fearlessness came from knowing the difference in strength between him and the enemy. Even if the enemy was stronger, he was still fearless. The Underworld Hall emissaries weren't his match in a one-on-one fight, but King Qingguang had been able to fight him. The outcome would only be known after a fight. Although King Qingguang was powerful, he was only a rising star of the Underworld Hall. According to the emissary captured by Lin Feng, there were reversion to Void Realm cultivators among the 10 Yama Kings, and more than one at that. Even if he didn't run into the 10 Yama Kings, a few more emissaries would put Shi Zhongtian under great pressure. Chapter 629. Both Shi Tianhao and Shi Zhongtian were worried about the whereabouts and safety of Shi Xiling and his wife, but since the matter involved Underworld Hall, it needed to be handled carefully. According to the information they currently knew, Underworld Hall had been hiding in a medium-class world, and the domain channel connecting this medium-class world to the outside world was actually connected to the outer space battlefield. Ever since the Underworld Hall was born, they had constantly come into contact with the outer space battlefield. Although the outer space battlefield was strange, unpredictable, and extremely chaotic, such that even the Underworld Hall's knowledge of it was limited, there was no doubt that the Underworld Hall was the most familiar with the outer space battlefield in the Heaven Yuan world. With the other party watching from the sidelines, Shi Tianhao and his grandson had to be careful if they wanted to enter the outer space battlefield to search for their loved ones. Underworld Hall was also secretly watching them. The two ultimately decided to discuss with Lin Feng before making a decision. Feng Biji guarded the domain channel leading to the outer space battlefield, while Zen Master Dade guarded the domain channel leading to the Divine Land. Next, Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi and the others continued to explore the internal situation of the Mystic Heaven Realm. At the same time, Shi Tianhao continued to search for the last bronze void cauldron that was lost in this medium-class world. Shi Zhongtian was already injured before coming out of the outer space battlefield, and the battle with the Underworld Hall envoys had worsened his injuries. However, he had already reached the primordial spirit stage. As long as he recovered from his injuries, he could return to the state of being one with the world. At that time, he could use the surrounding spiritual qi and immediately return to his peak state. It wasn't easy for him to reunite with his grandson, and the old man really couldn't bear to part with him. So he simply followed Shi Tianhao and the others. Shi Zhongtian carefully sensed the flow of spiritual qi in the mystic heaven realm, and immediately discovered something that Shi Tianhao and the others hadn't discovered. The spiritual qi in this medium-class world seems to be converging towards one place. Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Yangqing and Tuntin were taken aback for a moment, but they immediately discovered the mystery after Shi Zhongtian's reminder. They landed on the ground in a mountainous area. The spiritual energy in the mountainous area was far more abundant than in other places. They found a cave in the depths of the mountain. After entering the cave, they discovered that it was a huge cave that extended in all directions, like an underground palace. A stalactite crystal vein was hidden in the depths of the cave. Condensed stalactite crystals. After thousands of years in a karst cave, the stalactites would drip water rich in spiritual energy. After a large amount of it was collected, thousands of kilograms of spiritual water would condense into a crystal the size of a human finger. It was an extremely precious cultivation material. In the past, when Xianmen Tianzong opened the mountain gate for the first time outside Sand Continent City, the Great Zhou dynasty sent congratulatory gifts, including 1,000 kilograms of condensed stalactite crystals, which was quite rare. However, in front of Zhu Yi and the others was an entire stalactite crystal vein. No one knew how many minerals it contained. Shi Tianhao crushed a little of it and threw it into the air. He opened his mouth to catch it and chewed it directly. He carefully felt the spiritual energy in it and turned his head to say, "The quality is quite high." Zhu Yi and Yang Qing were speechless at the same time, but Shi Zhongtian laughed heartily. "Brat, your teeth are not bad." Tuntin, who was beside him, did not stand on ceremony and directly gulped down a huge amount of stalactite crystals. It was grinning from ear to ear as it ate. It was so excited that it was about to show its original form and gorge itself. Zhu Yi pulled her away and carefully felt the changes in the spiritual energy. His expression changed slightly. The total amount of spiritual energy in the stalactite crystals is gradually decreasing. Shi Zhongtian stopped smiling and walked to the vein. He gently tapped his finger and closed his eyes to carefully feel for a moment. Slowly he nodded. Indeed, the current speed of spiritual energy accumulation is faster than the speed of spiritual energy loss. Therefore, the mine is still in a state of accumulation and growth. However, I can clearly feel that the speed of spiritual energy loss is slow but unstoppable. In 1 or 2 years, the change is still very subtle, but in 100 years, the difference will be very obvious. After a little more time, about 1,000 years, the speed of spiritual energy loss will even exceed the speed of spiritual energy accumulation. At that time, there will be no need for people to mine. These mines will gradually dry up on their own, and even the existing mines will be exhausted. Shi Zhongtian's expression became much more solemn. For mortals, 100 years was a lifetime, but for cultivators who had formed the golden elixir, 100 years was not a long time. For Yuanying stage cultivators, even 1,000 years was just a part of their lives. For primordial soul stage cultivators, a single seclusion might last for 1,000 years. Tuntin pursed its lips and muttered, "Then we'll just use up these mines within 1,000 years." Zhu Yi shook his head and frowned. "I'm afraid it's because the existing mines are too large that they can suppress the loss of spiritual energy. If we mine these stalactite crystals in large quantities, it may cause the loss of spiritual energy to accelerate. At that time, the balance here will collapse in less than 1,000 years, and a large number of stalactite crystals will be wasted." Tuntin shouted. "That's still better than letting them dry up for nothing." Yang Qing pondered and said, "Let's look at the situation in other places. I remember that the water marrow crystal vein seemed to be fine." "It's not like that." Shi Tianhao and Zhu Yi shook their heads at the same time. "Actually, I felt that something was wrong in those places, but I couldn't find the reason. Now that I think about it carefully, I'm afraid it's the same situation here." Zhu Yi looked at Shi Zhongtian. "Just now, Elder Shi mentioned that the overall flow of spiritual energy in this world is converging in one direction. That's why I suddenly thought of this and found the problem. Now it seems that the loss of spiritual energy in these mines is closely related to the overall flow of spiritual energy in this Xiantian realm." Shi Tianhao said, "Let's look at other places." The total amount of spiritual energy in the Xiantian realm was not particularly abundant, but there were a few places where a large amount of spiritual energy had gathered and many precious treasures had been bred. Shi Tianhao and the others went to those places and even returned to check the water marrow crystal vein. As expected, there was the same problem in every mineral deposit. The same problem also existed in the areas where spiritual herbs and herbs grew. There was enough spiritual energy to promote the growth of spiritual herbs in a short period of time. But as time passed, these areas would become more and more barren, until they could no longer provide enough spiritual energy for the growth of spiritual herbs and herbs. Compared to the mineral veins, It was better here because spiritual herbs could be transplanted. However, if the mineral deposits were to be excavated and transplanted away from their original environment, they would completely become non-renewable resources. If the mineral veins were kept intact, under normal circumstances, as long as they were not overexploited, they could be restored. Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi and Yang Qing looked at each other and could see the seriousness in each other's eyes. Whether it was Lin Feng or the others, they all hoped to completely occupy this Xiantian realm and turn it into one of the foundations of Xianmen Tianzong's future development. Under such circumstances, the people of Xianmen Tianzong naturally hoped to develop for a long time and build a lasting foundation, instead of doing business once and then leaving as they did in the cloudy forest world. It would be too easy for them to leave after doing one job. They could just use up all the existing resources. Even if they did not have the ability to do so, Lin Feng himself, Feng Tupole's Zen Master Dade, Shi Zhongtian, and a few other primordial soul realm experts could still do it if they worked together. However, if they wanted to develop for a long time, the current situation was a bit of a pain in the ass. If the problem of the increasing loss of spiritual energy in the mineral veins was not solved, they would not even dare to excavate the existing mineral deposits. Otherwise, once the balance collapsed, it was likely to lead to the rapid depletion of the mineral veins. Zhu Yi said in a deep voice, "Since all the spiritual energy is gathering in one direction, that should be the crux of the problem. Find that place and then solve the problem." Shi Zhongtian carefully analyzed the flow of spiritual energy again and said, "I can cast a spell to bring you all there." "Thank you, Senior Shi." Zhu Yi and Yang Qing cupped their hands together. Shi Tianhao looked at his grandfather and said, "You are injured now, it's better not to cast a spell." Shi Zhongtian smiled and said, "Silly boy, your grandfather killed in and out of the void battlefield, but he did not do anything to me." As he spoke, Shi Zhongtian formed a spell with both hands and shouted in a low voice, "Boys, concentrate your spirit and qi and calm your mind." A white light shone and enveloped everyone. Then, with a roar, the white light flashed and disappeared on the spot. Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Yang Qing and Tuntun's consciousness were clear at this time, and they could clearly feel the changes in the outside world. They could only see the light and shadow in front of them changing rapidly, and were unpredictable. Shi Zhongtian's spell was not to bring them to fly in the void, but to integrate into the general trend of the spiritual energy flow in the Xiantian realm. It was as if they had turned into a small boat, floating on the river and being sent to the end of the river. This was something that only essence divinity cultivators could do. Shi Zhongtian was injured, so he couldn't merge with the heavens and the earth in his normal state. Therefore, he had to be careful when he used this technique to avoid being repelled by the spirit qi in the mystic heaven realm. Everyone followed the flow of the spiritual energy tide, and finally landed on a seemingly ordinary open space. It was impossible to tell that this was the place where the spiritual energy of the entire medium-class world gathered. The spiritual energy here was not abundant. If Shi Zhongtian had not brought them here, even if Shi Tianhao and the others passed by here, they would not have noticed anything strange. After Shi Zhongtian landed, he stamped his feet and a huge crack appeared on the ground. The crack spread downward rapidly and formed a big rift valley that looked like an abyss. Zhu Yi and the others looked down and saw that the rift valley was so deep that they could not see the bottom. It was pitch black and there was no spiritual energy at all. It was like a dead land. Shi Zhongtian brought a few people with him and flew downwards, going deeper and deeper. After a while, Yang Qing raised her head and looked up. She saw that the valley entrance above her head was like a line of sky, leaving only a trace of faint light. At this time, everyone finally felt a faint suction force coming from below. The deeper they went, the stronger the suction force became. The sound of water gushing could be heard. The group continued to descend and soon saw a huge pool of water. It was pitch black and there was no light coming from it. It was like an abyss. Even the natural light that fell from above was instantly devoured when it came into contact with the pool. Zhu Yi frowned slightly. He operated the Sutra of the Infinite Light Buddha Sutra, and produced infinite light that shone on the pool. However, it was instantly devoured and the light could not reach the depths of the pool. Chapter 630. Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others explored the mystic heaven realm, while Wang Lin sent the small worlds that sealed King Qin Guangwang and the other underworld hall cultivators back to Jade Capital Mountain. On Jade Capital Mountain, Lin Feng was still guarding Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan stabilized the 5 types of true fires and polished his dermic powers. This was a very long process. When Wang Lin returned to the mountain, he presented the purple qi mass formed by the small worlds to Lin Feng. At the same time, he also presented the underworld hall emissary that Shi Zhongtian had captured. When Lin Feng saw this, he could not help but smile. The restrictions on the mysterious sky god sealing flag are not enough. Little Lin, let me guide you on how to refine more restrictions on the mysterious sky god sealing flag. Wang Lin nodded. He had obtained the mysterious sky god sealing flag. Although he could nurture Dharma treasures, his cultivation had not reached the primordial soul realm, so he could not continue to refine the mysterious sky god sealing flag. He could only rely on the mysterious sky god sealing flag to cultivate. However, if a spirit-nurturing Dharma treasure was not refined by a primordial soul realm expert, it would be very slow and inefficient to cultivate by itself. Since Lin Feng had previously given the mysterious sky god sealing flag to Wang Lin, he would not refine it himself. At most, he would only guide him from the side. Now that there were fewer restrictions on the Dharma power on the mysterious sky god sealing flag, the number of primordial soul realm cultivators it could confine was limited. Therefore, Lin Feng helped Wang Lin add a few more restrictions. On one hand, it was to improve the strength of the Dharma treasure. On the other hand, it was equivalent to giving some guidance to Wang Lin. One was teaching, while the other was learning. Wang Lin's comprehension was outstanding, so he understood a lot of the profound essence. The rest that he could not understand was limited by his current cultivation. The profound sky god sealing flag. The more restrictions that were refined into the magic treasure, the more enemies' primordial spirits it could imprison. After Lin Feng added a few more restrictions, he waved the flag and immediately sent King Qingguang and the other 3 nascent divinity realm emissaries into the profound sky god sealing flag. Qin Guangwang wanted to struggle. He kept using the blood river painting in his hand to resist the profound sky god sealing flag's magic power. Lin Feng smiled and slapped down with his palm, instantly dispersing the nether blood river. King Qin Guangwang let out a roar of despair and was absorbed by the mysterious sky sealing flag. After interrogating them, Lin Feng smiled and said, "Very well. First, you came looking for trouble with my 3rd disciple, and then you tried in vain to kill my youngest disciple. I didn't go looking for trouble with you, but you came looking for trouble yourself?" King Qin Guangwang, who was on the mysterious sky god sealing flag, had a bitter expression. The heavens can be my witness. He really didn't think that in order to capture Shi Zhongtian, he would run into the mysterious sky realm and directly run into Shi Tianhao and the rest. If he ran into them, then so be it. He had the blood river painting and could control the nether blood river. Even if Shi Tianhao and the rest had Lin Feng's divine ability avatar, it wasn't like they didn't have a chance to escape. Helplessly, Xianmen Tianzong wanted to open up a medium-class world this time, so Lin Feng couldn't be there himself. So he helped his disciples make sufficient preparations. Not only did he send Feng Liangji to the mysterious sky realm, he also let Feng Liangji bring his own divine ability scroll. This divine ability wasn't for injuring the enemy, but for suppressing and sealing, making King Qingguang instantly lose his incantation. After capturing these underworld hall cultivators, especially King Qingguang, Lin Feng interrogated them carefully and learned a lot of secrets related to the underworld hall. The space in the void battlefield was chaotic and complicated. It was very difficult to determine a specific location. When cultivators entered from the outside world, it was difficult to determine where they landed. When they left the void battlefield and returned to the boundless world or some medium-class world, it was also difficult to determine the specific location. The medium-class world where the headquarters of the underworld hall was located was not in contact with the boundless world. It was only connected to the void battlefield, but the entrances and exits were also erratic. Even if it was a branch hall master like King Qingguang and a type of underworld hall cultivator in the primordial spirit realm, if they wanted to enter and exit that medium-class world, It was also very difficult to determine their position. They had to rely on the talismans bestowed by the Hall Master of the Underworld Hall to guide them. However, these talismans were quite mystical and needed to be used in both directions. Lin Feng couldn't head to and locate that medium-class world just by relying on the talismans seized from King Qingguang and the rest. This underworld hall is quite cautious. In this way, it is somewhat similar to my Jade Capital Mountain, except that my Jade Capital Mountain can move at will and appear anywhere in the world. Lin Feng thought to himself, but they are very secretive, making it difficult for me to attack them. In fact, thinking about it carefully, this was not surprising. As the orthodoxy of the king of the underworld, they were probably more hated than the devil path cultivators in the past. If their lair was not secretive, it would have been destroyed long ago. What is the purpose of you searching for souls that are different from ordinary people? Asked Lin Feng silently. At this moment, King Qingguang's primordial spirit was restrained by the Xiantian God sealing flag, so he could only answer honestly. It is an order from the Hall Master. It is related to cultivation, but I do not know the details. Lin Feng nodded slightly. After capturing the emissary of the Underworld Hall in the Void battlefield, Lin Feng already knew that although the Underworld Hall was secretive, it was not a simple sect. In addition to cultivating their own powerhouses, they would also recruit foreign powerhouses. The orthodoxy of the King of the Underworld was quite special. No matter how high or low one's cultivation level was, they could cultivate it. They could cultivate from a young age to establish their Dao foundation, or they could cultivate other Dao techniques first, and then transform their own foundation into the orthodoxy of the King of the Underworld. After transforming the Dao technique into the orthodoxy of the King of the Underworld, one could still retain 70% to 80% of the essence of the Dao technique they originally cultivated. The reason for this was that the orthodoxy of the King of the Underworld, whether it was cultivation methods or spells, involved the soul. However, it was not like the Taishu Temple's method of spiritual travel to Taishu Temple, or the Northern Militant Imperial Court's method of cultivating the soul. The reason why the Underworld Hall Master searched for souls that were different from ordinary people was probably related to his cultivation. Master, this is a spell cultivated by the orthodoxy of the King of the Underworld. It's very interesting. Wang Lin said. It's also deathly qi, but it's different from ordinary deathly qi. It's like chaos. Lin Feng smiled and knocked on the pole of the mysterious sky god sealing flag. King Qingguang immediately answered honestly. That's chaotic deathly qi. After refining the deathly qi with a Dao technique, it will return to its original chaotic state. However, it will stop right before it completely turns into chaos. Then, it will be refined with the second secret technique to obtain the complete chaotic deathly qi. Because the process of turning into chaos is interrupted, this deathly qi is almost impossible to reverse. It's very difficult to turn into vitality, so it's more powerful than ordinary deathly qi. A look of understanding appeared on Wang Lin's face as he nodded his head. It is indeed unique. Lin Feng handed the mysterious sky god sealing flag to him and said with a smile, "Take it back and study it carefully." Wang Lin took the mysterious sky god sealing flag. He was not in a hurry to ask about the Dao technique. Instead, he first asked about the late-stage Yuanying cultivator, who massacred his hometown in the past. I know about this, but that person isn't a cultivator under me. He's a peripheral member of the Underworld Hall and a foreign protector. He's not part of the core circle, so I don't know his exact whereabouts, King Qingguang answered truthfully. As far as I know, he's under the command of the disobedient official king. Wang Lin's eyes turned cold. The disobedient official king, Lin Feng said indifferently. There's no need to rush. The battle between the Underworld Hall and the Xianmen Tianzong has just begun. Yes, master. Wang Lin nodded and said no more. King Qingguang sighed. Lin Feng's words showed that he was determined to deal with the Underworld Hall. The Underworld Hall had never underestimated the Celestial Sect of Wonders and Lin Feng. Especially after the battle in West Hill City, they would never underestimate them. However, the world's understanding of Xianmen Tianzong had always been that sect master Lin Feng was extremely powerful, and that the disciples under him were all talented. It was just that the overall foundation of the sect was still very weak. After all, it had only been a short time since the sect was established. But now, King Qin Guangwang did not think so. With the two extremes of the peak and Shi Tianhao's grandfather, Shi Zhongtian, who had reached the primordial soul realm and returned from the void battlefield, he might return to the Shi family, or join Yujing Mountain in the future. Xianmen Tianzong's high-level combat power had gradually begun to expand. In the past, Lin Feng had to do things personally, but now he no longer needed to do it himself. At this moment, Lin Feng was no longer a commander without an army. He had to personally go into battle at the slightest provocation. Putting everything else aside, most sects and forces did not dare to step into the mystic heaven realm with two extremes, Zen Master Dade and Shi Zhongtian standing there. As Shi Tianhao Zhu Yi and the others grew up, the middle-level combat power had already been completely formed. With their growth speed, it would only become more and more terrifying. The low-level disciples might not be able to make a name for themselves, or at least, they were unusually few in number. But as time passed, with the mystic heaven realm, a brand new medium-class world that had yet to be explored, providing them with resources, the time needed would inevitably be greatly shortened. Previously, in the void battlefield, Lin Feng had already thrown the underworld hall into the blacklist. Now he was merely advancing the ranking of the underworld hall on the blacklist. However, Lin Feng himself did not have a strong desire to make a move. The reason was very simple. If he provoked the chosen ones like Wang Lin, Shi Tianhao, and the others, he was destined to become the dust of history. It did not matter that it was not easy to find him now. He would not stop sending these kind of warm transport teams to his doorstep. Didn't he just send a branch hall master and 3 underworld hall emissaries? Right now, Lin Feng was mainly thinking about how to convert all the resources in the mystic heaven realm into the driving force for the development of his sect. This was a very good opportunity for him to lay a solid foundation for his sect. As he thought about this, Lin Feng suddenly had an idea. At this moment in the mystic heaven realm, Shi Tianhao and the others were standing in front of the abyss-like black pool. A light flashed from between Shi Tianhao's eyebrows and a tall yellow light shadow appeared. It was Lin Feng's earthly sovereign Dharma body. The earthly sovereign Dharma body, which was originally 200 feet tall, had shrunk to its original size and landed beside Shi Tianhao and the others. As the cultivation of Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao and the others became higher and higher, they all grew up. Lin Feng gradually stopped entrusting abilities and avatars to them. The growth of fledglings under the protection of their parents was still slower in the end. This time, because the exploration of the mystic heaven realm was very important, he allowed the earthly sovereign Dharma body to accompany him. However, he did not show up during the previous battles. Now that he was facing this black pool, Lin Feng immediately felt that something was different. Therefore, he summoned the earthly sovereign Dharma body. After a simple greeting with Shi Zhongtian, the earthly sovereign Dharma body, who was connected to Lin Feng's mind, stood silently above the pool and sensed the changes. After a while he said, "There is something under the pool." As he spoke, he wrapped Shi Tianhao and the others with his Dharma power, and sank into the pool together with Shi Zhongtian. As soon as he entered, Lin Feng felt an endless chill that pierced into his bones. The pitch-black pool water devoured all light. It was extremely yin and extremely cold. At the same time, it nurtured the concept of pure yin, extreme cold and darkness. Moreover, it had reached an extremely profound realm. That feeling was as if the power of the solitary dark skeleton, Xianming true water, and dark flower amethyst had merged into one. The pool water was not viscous and there were no impurities in the water. However, it was pitch black and did not emit any light. Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian continued to dive and soon, they noticed something strange. There was life in this pitch black pool, and it was a rather powerful life. Chapter 631. The pitch-black water swallowed up all the light. Even with the Dharmakaya of the Emperor of Heaven bearing and Shi Zhongtian's supernatural powers, they could only barely ensure that they could see clearly within a limited range of the water in front of them. However, the water seemed to be bottomless. The two of them dived together, but couldn't reach the bottom. The space here was also abnormal. Lin Feng dived into the water, as if he was strolling in the pitch-black universe. Moreover, it was a universe where starlight was completely extinguished. This is indeed a very suitable environment for nurturing. Lin Feng thought. The quiet darkness is good for nurturing, but the extreme yin and cold environment can give birth to the existence of extreme yang and heat. The embryo and the mother have reached a state of balance. As they dived, Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian quickly discovered that there were powerful life forms in the pitch-black water. There were no natives in the Xiantian realm. The plants here were more primitive and did not have any intelligence. Although there were many spiritual herbs, they were still young and did not turn into monsters or demons. This was related to the overall flow of the world's spiritual qi. A large amount of spiritual qi was gathered in this black water. Lin Feng's divine sense swept over, and instantly felt that the life in this pool, no matter if it was the level of intelligence development or the strength of their life aura, was far higher than the life that naturally multiplied in the mysterious heaven realm outside the pool. Soon Lin Feng, Shi Zhongtian and the others saw the residence here. It was a relatively small fish with a pitch-black body. It looked like a carp, but it had a pair of golden eyes on the top of its head. The golden light from the fish's eyes could penetrate the pitch-black water, and not be swallowed by the darkness. Lin Feng studied the golden light, and found that it contained rich spiritual qi. It was indeed extremely yang and heat like sunlight. However, it was condensed into a beam and did not disperse. The fish's golden eyes seemed to be curiously sizing up Lin Feng and the others. In its limited memory, there were no other life forms other than its own kind. However, it was just curious. After taking a look at Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian, it ignored them and swam deeper into the water. The golden light from its eyes seemed to open up a path that was connected to something at the end. It led the fish all the way down as if it was heading to its final destination. Lin Feng's consciousness swept across and could clearly feel the fish's emotions. It was not returning to its nest or simply heading somewhere. Instead, it had an attitude that was similar to a pilgrimage, passionate and pure. That's strange. Is it going to the carp leaping through the dragon gate? Lin Feng found it a bit funny and greeted Shi Zhongtian. The two of them then followed behind the golden-eyed blackfish, diving down with it, and seeing where this interesting blackfish is going. Diving down along the way, Lin Feng very quickly discovered that it was not only that golden-eyed blackfish that they met at the beginning. There were also many golden-eyed blackfish that were also diving down together. The golden light emitted from their eyes directly led downwards, like two golden threads pulling the blackfish all the way down. Apart from that, they also met even more fish. They swam leisurely in the water, and were not led down by the golden light like they were on a pilgrimage. However, these fish were relatively small in size, and the golden light in their eyes was relatively weak and dim. Lin Feng's consciousness swept over, carefully comparing for a bit. He could discover that the strength of the golden light in the eyes of the black fish was completely proportional to their size, or age. As the black fish grew bigger and bigger, the golden light in their eyes also became stronger and stronger. It seems that as these fish grow, the golden light in their eyes will also gradually become stronger. Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian looked at each other. When they reach adulthood or grow to a certain extent, the golden light in their eyes will be attracted by something at the bottom of the pool. Then these fish will be led down as well. It is as if that is their final destination, or the final goal of their growth. Shi Zhongtian stretched out his hand and grabbed a few fish that had not yet reached adulthood. After comparing them, he said, "Although the golden light emitted from the eyes of these fish is extremely hot and yang, the essence of their flesh and blood is nourished by the pool. It is extremely cold and yin, pure and clean." He paused and said, "Whether it is the human race or the demon race, if they eat the flesh and blood of these fish and absorb the essence, it will be a great tonic. Especially for cultivators who practice the yin and cold Dao techniques, it is a great tonic." Lin Feng nodded and looked down at the deepest part of the pool. Maybe there is a big guy down there waiting for these fish to fall into the trap and eat the essence of their flesh and blood to strengthen themselves. Shi Zhongtian said, "The spirit energy of the entire dimensional realm is unconsciously gathering here, nourishing the tens of thousands of fish in the pool. Then these fish are all used to feed the big guy down there." Good move. Lin Feng smiled silently and continued to dive down. Let me see what kind of god it is. With the golden light in the fish's eyes to guide the way, Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian did not need to determine the direction. They just went down like this. At the beginning, the terrain was wide and the visibility in the dark pool was extremely low, so they could not see anything. The deeper they went, the more Lin Feng and the others could see more and more golden light rays. There were tens of thousands of them, shining down from all directions. It was as if there were countless rays of sunlight, gradually illuminating the dark pool. At the top end of every 2 golden rays of light is a golden-eyed black fish. Some of the black fish have already dived down. Lin Feng followed the light upwards and could see their bodies. Looking at some rays of light, the top end was still hidden in the dark pool water, but without asking, it also originated from the eyes of the black fish. It's just that these black fish haven't had the time to dive down yet. There were too many light rays. They formed a wave of light, causing the bottom of the pool to be as bright as day. Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian watched this scene silently. They watched the innumerable golden-eyed black fish swim towards the bottom in an endless stream. At the same time, tens of thousands of golden-eyed black fish reached the final destination. At the same time, even more golden-eyed black fish were on the way, also heading towards the final destination. In the pool above, there were even more golden-eyed black fish that had not matured yet. They lived quietly in the pool, waiting for themselves to grow up. Then, they would also join the great migration below, rushing towards their final destination. Although these dark fish noticed the sudden arrival of the outsiders, they turned a blind eye to them and paid no attention to them. Lin Feng's eyes flashed and his body continued to descend. There, the golden light emitted by tens of thousands of fishes' eyes gathered together, becoming more and more magnificent. It was as if they had formed an ocean of light. Compared to the pitch-black pool above, it was like 2 different worlds. Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian landed above the golden ocean of light. Then they saw a scene that shocked them. Even though they had already reached the primordial soul realm, when they saw this scene, they still felt slightly shaken. In the ocean of light, a pearl-like ball was constantly bobbing up and down. The space here had already been completely distorted. From afar, the ball did not seem big, but Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian were sure that the ball was as big as a star in the sky. There was a bright light surging inside the ball. It was like sunlight, but also like fire. It was blazing hot and extremely pure. This place formed a sharp contrast with the pitch-black pool above. It was the opposite of yin and yang, hot and cold, light and darkness. The bright light was as dazzling as the sun. At such a close distance, even powerful cultivators did not dare to look directly at it. Otherwise, their spiritual soul and physical body would be burned. Although Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian were not afraid, they could feel the majestic power contained in it. In the golden ocean of light around the ball, there were golden carps jumping out from time to time, and then falling back into the ocean of light. Looking closely, one could see that in this ocean of light, there were countless golden carps. Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions, trillions. There were so many golden carps that it was impossible to count. The number of golden carps in the ocean of light was countless times more than the total number of black fish that Lin Feng and the rest had seen along the way. In the black pool above, the golden eyes of the black fish shone down and landed on the golden ocean of light. Then they led them all the way down and into the ocean of light. Once these black fish entered the ocean of light, their bodies seemed to be plated with a layer of golden light. They turned into golden carps and swam in the ocean of light. Lin Feng sensed the changes in the spiritual energy. Slowly he nodded. As expected, once they entered the ocean of light, the life form of the black fish completely changed. All the yin and cold essence qi in their bodies were instantly transformed into yang and hot essence qi. Yin and yang were reversed. The mysterious power formed when yin and yang were reversed was supplied to the sun-like ball. However, Lin Feng's eyes turned. This ball did not kill the donkey when it was no longer of use. This ocean of light was formed by its spiritual energy. It contained these golden carps but did not devour them. Instead, they formed a symbiotic relationship. To be precise, it was not just a symbiotic relationship. After the black fish entered the golden ocean of light, and turned into golden carps. They were also supported by the aura of the ball. Gradually, they became one with the power of the ball. It was an incomparably majestic power. When Lin Feng and the others faced this sun-like ball, it was as if they were facing a creation world. Shi Chongtian's face was also filled with astonishment. Could this be the legendary creation treasure? Silently, Lin Feng stared at the ball for a while and shook his head. It's not a creation treasure, but... He exhaled softly. But a treasure embryo that could possibly nurture a creation treasure. No matter what the cultivation of the refiner was, the refined treasure would be at the spirit nurturing level and would gradually improve. Treasures that were born Khanate would be at the transformation or Mahayana level the moment they were refined. Only creation-grade Dharma treasures were different. Some of them were acquired, while others were born. It was extremely difficult for a treasure to become a creation treasure. In the history of the great heaven primordial world, the creation treasures could only cross the threshold that was like a natural chasm if they were matched with a certain amount of luck. In fact, most creation treasures were born Khanate. The great Tao of heaven and earth gave birth to an origin embryo. Then it would fall into the hands of powerful people and be refined. Only then would it be completed. The golden ball placed in front of Lin Feng right now was impressively a magic treasure embryo that could possibly nurture a creation-level magic treasure. Lin Feng's gaze wavered. The embryo hasn't formed yet. It's still in the process of nurturing. Chapter 632. Lin Feng carefully observed the golden carps in the Sea of Light, and found that their life forms had completely changed. Although the flesh and blood essence of the golden-eyed black fish contained extreme yin and extreme cold spiritual qi, they were still normal life forms. Animals and fish had their own souls. However, after entering the golden Sea of Light and turning into golden carps, they were no longer complete life forms. Instead, they were more like monsters. Lin Feng scanned them with his divine senses. Although these golden carps still had their own consciousness and retained all their previous memories, they were no longer pure life forms. Instead, they had become a part of the Sea of Light. Affected by the golden ball of light, the Sea of Light and the billions of golden carps in the Sea of Light were tainted with the eternal intent realm and aura of creation. It's just like how humans cultivate Taoist techniques and form the primordial spirit. They become one with heaven and earth and naturally have an unlimited lifespan. As long as heaven and earth are not destroyed, humans will not die. Shi Zhongtian, who was at the side, murmured, "It's the same for these golden carps. As long as this treasure of creation is not destroyed, their natural lifespan will not end." Lin Feng nodded his head. That's right, they provided all of their life essence to this magic treasure embryo. And this magic treasure embryo also in turn supports and protects them. If it can really make it through the calamity of the world, then it can also ferry these carps to the other shore. Of course, these carps were only protected by this treasure of creation. They did not have the strength of a human primordial spirit expert or a demon race great sage. The golden ball of light protected them, but first of all, they had to have enough ability. When the golden ball of light was destroyed, there would be no eggs left intact. Naturally, these golden carps would all return to dust and dust. Even so, these golden-eyed black fish came here and changed their life forms, which undoubtedly greatly extended their lifespan. In addition, this treasure of creation had not really been nurtured yet. It was not even a treasure of creation. It could only be said that it was an embryo of an embryo. It would still take a long time for it to completely mature. Or rather, it should be said that it needed more spiritual qi from the mystic realm, and more golden-eyed blackfish to be born in the pool, and then enter this Sea of Light. Even if it was completely nurtured, it was still unknown whether it could be refined into a treasure of creation. How much effort did the primordial Shi Huang and the primeval Qin dynasty spend to completely refine the immortal dragon city? Even if this golden ball of light was completely nurtured, it would only be a Dharma treasure embryo. There was only the possibility that it could give birth to a Dharma treasure of creation. There were still many variables, and if there was a single mistake, countless years of effort would be wasted. Of course, even if it did not become a creation realm, it could still refine a powerful magic treasure. In the future, it was not as if there was no chance for it to slowly improve and advance. However, the chances of that happening would be much slimmer, and it would undoubtedly be a waste for the golden ball of light to have such a solid foundation. Therefore, Lin Feng quickly calmed down and looked at the golden ball of light. He thought to himself, I still need a lot of planning. Shi Chongtian snapped out of his daze and seemed to have thought of something. He turned around to look at Zhang Xian and hesitated. Lin Feng knew what he wanted to say. Now, it was equivalent to using the spiritual qi of the entire heaven mystic realm to nurture this golden ball of light. All the spiritual qi in the heaven mystic realm was gathered here, forming a unique ecosystem. Golden-eyed black fishes that were unique to this place were nurtured in the dark pond of extreme yin and extreme cold. Then, the life essence of these black fishes would be sacrificed, transforming the purest yin and cold darkness into yang light, thus nurturing this golden ball of extreme yang and extreme heat. Many mines and valleys in the heaven mystic realm that were rich in spiritual artifacts were slowly declining. In fact, their spiritual qi was being extracted to supply this place. Now the question was, should he take this Dharma treasure embryo of the creation realm, or protect this dimensional realm? This was a very painful choice, especially since Lin Feng's original plan was to turn the heaven mystic realm into his own backyard. Dharma treasures of the creation realm were hard to come by. Sacrificing a dimensional realm didn't mean that one could obtain a Dharma treasure embryo of the creation realm. If that was possible, all the dimensional realms would have been destroyed a long time ago. Countless powerful figures would be more than happy to sacrifice their dimensional realms in exchange for Dharma treasures of the creation realm. The birth of this golden ball of light in the heaven mystic realm was a complete accident. It was so unexpected that it couldn't be measured by probability. It was almost unique. There would be no other shop like this after this one. Dharma treasures of the creation realm were extremely precious to any force. Even the Taishu temple was no exception. With Lin Feng's current wealth, many treasures could be casually given to his disciples. There weren't many things that could be of use to him, but Dharma treasures of the creation realm were definitely at the top of the list. Of course, he hoped to refine a Dharma treasure of the creation realm through this golden ball of light. However, there were many problems that needed to be considered. As the embryo of the Dharma treasure, the golden ball of light wasn't mature yet. It still needed to be nurtured in the heaven mystic realm. This process was completely natural, and there was no way to speed it up. Who knew how long it would take for it to fully mature? In addition, there was no precedent of a dimensional realm nurturing a Dharma treasure embryo of the creation realm. Then, if the entire heaven mystic realm's spiritual qi was exhausted, and the golden ball of light hadn't fully matured yet, what should he do then? For the time being, Lin Feng didn't even consider the greed of others. If they dared to come and fight him, it was a small matter. However, the problems that the golden ball of light might face in the process of nurturing itself were the most troublesome ones. It was very likely that this would be a big pie in the sky. He would spend a lot of effort and sacrifice many things, but in the end it would all be for naught. I want the Dharma treasure embryo of the creation realm. Moreover, Lin Feng pondered for a moment, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. It's not impossible to keep the heaven mystic realm, but it will take some effort. Lin Feng calculated in his heart. He turned to look at Shi Zhongtian and said with a smile, My sect plans to occupy this dimensional realm. I hope that you can keep this matter a secret, sect fellow Shi. Shi Zhongtian nodded straightforwardly. Don't worry, master of the celestial sect. I know what I'm doing. Lin Feng raised his eyes and looked at the black pool above him. Apart from that, I can feel that there seems to be something hidden in that pool. He floated up and Shi Zhongtian followed closely behind. The two gradually left the sea of light and re-entered the pitch-black water. They used their own divine senses to determine the direction and move forward. After a period of time, Lin Feng stopped. Silently, he looked at the quiet dark world in front of him. Shi Zhongtian also stopped. He was a little puzzled, but when he saw Lin Feng's confident look, he calmed down. He concentrated his divine senses and probed ahead. Very soon, Shi Zhongtian also realized that something was wrong. In the pitch-black water, Other than a large number of golden-eyed black fishes, there was a huge creature. Demonic power surged around the huge creature, and its aura was majestic. It was actually not inferior to Shi Zhongtian's. At the same time when Shi Zhongtian discovered it, the other party also sent a thought to him. Who is there? There was no malicious intent in the thought, and it did not seem violent or violent. Instead, it was pure and innocent, like a child who was ignorant of the world. Shi Zhongtian looked at Lin Feng. Lin Feng nodded, indicating that the other party was the existence that he had sensed earlier. The other party was obviously not human, and it had never come into contact with humans before. It was impossible for it to understand the human language. Thus, Lin Feng used his divine sense to directly send his thoughts to the other party. We have just arrived here. Who are you? The huge creature seemed to feel that Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian did not have any malicious intent, so it swam over directly. Its body was pitch black, and it could not be seen clearly in the dark waters. It was only when it was very close to Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian, and came into contact with the faint light that Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian emitted that Lin Feng could see its appearance clearly. It was an extremely huge black carp. It looked like a carp, but its body was even bigger than a normal whale. It actually looked a little like the Kuan Peng when it transformed into its Kuan form. If it floated to the surface of the water, it would look like an island. Lin Feng noticed that the appearance of this huge black fish was exactly the same as those golden-eyed black fishes. There was only one difference. This huge black fish did not have eyes. All the golden-eyed black fishes, regardless of whether the golden light in their eyes was strong or weak, or whether they were mature, swam towards the sea of light below. Only this huge black fish's eye sockets were completely pitch black, just like its body. There was not a single ray of light coming from them. Lin Feng scanned it with his divine sense, and immediately determined that the fish did not retract the golden light in its eyes on its own. Rather, it really did not have eyes. A fish without eyes. However, it was precisely this eyeless fish that was different from his kind. Instead, it had developed its own spiritual wisdom and cultivated into a demon. Furthermore, it had even strangely cultivated an indestructible demon soul, and became a great saint of the demon race. The mystic heaven realm is also a medium-class world. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any void thunder tribulation. Then how did it form its nascent soul, cultivate to become a demon king, and finally cultivate an indestructible demon soul? Shi Zhongtian clicked his tongue in wonder. Lin Feng watched as the golden-eyed black fishes rushed towards the sea of light under the guidance of the golden light. Then he looked at the eyeless fish in front of him and suddenly fell silent. Were you born without eyes? After a while, Lin Feng asked with his divine sense. The eyeless fish swayed its tail and replied, I originally had eyes just like everyone else. As I grew older and the golden light in my eyes grew stronger, the desire to go to the sea of light became stronger and stronger. It was as if that place was the greatest happiness, my lifelong pursuit, and the most perfect destination. It was as if everything could be obtained there. The eyeless fish replied silently, but I don't know if I was born different from everyone else. Although I really wanted to go to the sea of light, there was always a voice telling me not to go. Because there is no freedom there. The huge black fish swam in the pool. At that time, I didn't really understand what benefits there were in going to the sea of light, but I just didn't want to go. Later, as I grew older, I somehow understood many things. So I knew that if I threw myself into the sea of light, although I could never leave it, I would be immortal. Our lives are actually very short. In order to pursue immortality, everyone is extremely eager to enter the sea of light. But I don't like it. Chapter 633. Throwing oneself into the sea of light can grant one eternal life, but one can never leave the sea of light for the rest of one's life. Once one leaves the sea of light, one will immediately turn into ashes. I don't like this kind of longevity. Lin Feng looked at the eyeless fish in front of him, and listened to his explanation. He sighed softly. Life or freedom, which was more important? It was the same choice that had been talked about so many times. But when people really face this problem, How many people could make a decisive choice and never regret it? Lin Feng asked. Do you have a name? The eyeless fish was silent for a moment, then nodded his big head down. It calls me pupilless. This it was referring to the golden ball of light in the sea of light below. Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian couldn't help but understand. Although the golden ball of light was still an embryo of a magic treasure of creation, it had already developed its own spiritual consciousness. However, this kind of spiritual consciousness was vague and grand, and it wouldn't appear often. It was like the self-consciousness of a world. Although it was not mature yet, it already contained the aura of creation and could trigger the void thunder tribulation. It was its existence that allowed the black fish named Pupilless to pass the thunder tribulation and form a demon infant. That was why Pupilless continued to cultivate and finally formed an immortal demon soul. The spiritual consciousness of a magic treasure of creation like this would not appear easily. For example, if Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian caught a small number of black fish or went deep into the pool in the heaven mystic realm, the golden ball of light wouldn't pay any attention to them. But if Lin Feng and the others completely cut off the process of the black fish entering the sea of light, interfere with the golden ball of light's self-maturation, or completely destroy the heaven mystic realm, the golden ball of light would definitely react. Only such a major event would the golden ball of light react. Pupilless was more special. He was the first golden-eyed black fish to doubt, reject, and finally resist his own instinct and fate. He spontaneously broke away from the orbit of fate and left the special balance of spiritual qi and the ecosystem that had been formed in the heaven mystic realm for a long time to nurture the golden ball of light. This behavior attracted the attention of the golden ball of light. However, the golden ball of light was not angry at this child for going against its will. On the contrary, it helped Wu Tong because he wanted to walk his own path. Perhaps it was just out of interest, or perhaps it was out of generosity. To it was a simple matter, but it had helped Pupilless a lot. In the cloud forest world, more than 10 cloud forest trees contain vast amounts of essence energy. Their foundations were so robust that they were not inferior to essence spirit powerhouses. But because there was no void thunder tribulation in the cloud forest world, these 10 over cloud forest trees had grown for countless years, but were unable to form a demon nascent soul all along. Pupilless' eyes made a look gesture towards the sea of light down below. At this moment, he had already formed the undying demon soul. Although he didn't have eyes, his soul consciousness could naturally determine the direction. Looking at the golden ball of light, Pupilless had mixed feelings. After attaining the indestructible demon soul, as long as he wanted to, he could reconstruct his eyes at any time, but he did not do so in the end. Lin Feng asked, "Is there anyone else like you among your kind?" Yes, in my memory, after such a long time had passed, there would always be someone like me every once in a while, who would develop a higher level of intelligence. Pupilless answered. Most of them would still dive down to the sea of light after reaching adulthood. Only a few were like me. Speaking up to this point, Pupilless's mood was a little gloomy. But in the end, these companions all died. Their lifespans came to an end, and in the end, they died and disappeared. I taught them everything I knew, but until now, I'm still the only one. Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian looked as usual. Wasn't it the same for the human world? Although this was a world where cultivators lived, those who could cultivate successfully, even if they were only qi refinement stage cultivators, were still very few compared to the population of the entire world. Most people in the world couldn't cultivate qi refinement. They lived a plain and busy life, and after a few decades, they died of old age and turned into a cup of soil. It was the same for qi refinement stage cultivators and foundation establishment stage cultivators. Their lifespans were no more than 100 years. Golden elixir cultivators could live for 1,000 years. Compared to mortals, they were undoubtedly immortal. But in the grand timeline of the entire world, it was just a small fragment. Yuanian cultivators had a lifespan of 3,600 years, but in the long river of time, they couldn't do much. Those golden-eyed black carps that chose to dive into the sea of light changed their life forms and became a part of the sea of light. As long as they left the sea of light, they would turn into ashes. But if they didn't leave the sea of light, they could actually move freely within the range of the Sea of Light. Retaining self-awareness and retaining their previous memories was actually no different from being alive. Under the protection of the Golden Ball of Light, they could even live for a long time. If the Golden Ball of Light became a treasure of creation and could truly withstand the world's extinction, then under its protection, these golden carps could even live until the next era. It was really close to immortality. They didn't need to cultivate hard, undergo tribulations, or increase their realm. Silently staying in the Sea of Light was enough. Compared to them, Pupilless seemed to be very stupid. She gave up such an easy and happy eternal life, just to maintain her most complete self without any restrictions. Without the protection of the Sea of Light, there are many dangers and many restrictions. How can it be called freedom? Pupilless murmured. But I feel that this is my own choice, not the fate of my race. This is the freedom I yearn for. Some companions like me, after trying hard, ultimately chose to give up. But without eyes and their own strength, they couldn't merge into the Sea of Light. As soon as they got close, they would be burned by the Sea of Light and even vaporized. So some of my companions started to curse me. In the midst of cursing, they gradually grew old and died. Pupilless was a little confused. In the face of these companions, I had no choice but to swallow them into my belly before they died, and use my own strength to nourish them. This could slow down their aging, but as time passed, everyone gradually died of old age. In the past, I went to tell everyone that there is another path in our lives, but now I don't dare to go, because I can't guarantee that they will all be like me. In that case, perhaps throwing oneself into the Sea of Light and obtaining immortality is also a good choice? Lin Feng opened his palm, revealing a small all-heavens world made of purple qi. Inside the small world, Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Yang Qing and Tuntin were all silent. During the process of diving, under the control of Lin Feng's divine sense, they could see everything that was happening outside. The communication with Pupilless divine sense was also transferred by Lin Feng to everyone, so that they could all understand the content. Follow the destiny of the race. Give up the possibility of one's own growth, and live forever in an environment of limited freedom? Or break free from the shackles of fate, fight for oneself in the wind and waves, fight for that 1 in a million chance to obtain great power, rely on one's own strength to obtain immortality, and defeat death? In a sense, Pupilless was fighting against his own instinct, which was the most basic and strongest instinct of almost all sentient beings. The instinct to survive. Zhu Yi and the others fell into deep thought. Because of the existence of the Golden Ball of Light, the fate of the golden-eyed blackfish race, and the struggle with Pupilless and a few others were not the same as the cultivation of the human race. If the human race did not cultivate, their lifespan would be limited, and they would undoubtedly die when the time came. Painstakingly cultivating and fighting against the heavens was also the embodiment of the instinct to survive. But the golden-eyed blackfish race did not need to painstakingly cultivate, and they could also obtain immortality with limited conditions. Pupilless broke free from this fate, but instead sent himself to a cliff full of thorns, where he could fall at any time and be crushed to pieces. The great terror between life and death was never a joke. The reason I present these things to you is not to ask you to overcome the instinct to survive like Pupilless and pursue the freedom in your hearts. Lin Feng's voice sounded in everyone's ears, but I want you to be able to understand more of the mysteries within, to distinguish your true heart, and to strengthen your Tao heart. Life, freedom, and the principles of heaven and earth all exist in one heart. They may be opposed, but they may also be unified. The subtleties within are what we cultivators need to grasp. Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and Yang Qing all took a deep breath and bowed to Lin Feng. Your disciples have learned. Although Xiao Yan and the others were not present, Lin Feng would make up for this lesson in the future. Pupilless, I am Lin Feng, the master of the Xianmen sect. I am not from this medium-class world, but from the divine land of the boundless world. My disciple, Xianmen Tianzong, is the first person to set foot in this medium-class world. In the future, I and my disciples will also occupy this world for cultivation. Lin Feng looked at the giant black fish without eyes in front of him. I will not interfere with the survival of you and your people, but in the future, I will take it. As he said this, Lin Feng pointed to the golden ball below and continued, taking this thing will not affect the natural reproduction of your race. Life, death, and old age are normal in the world. What are your plans next? Pupilless transmitted her thoughts. I will not interfere with what you want to do. It does not belong to me. And this world does not belong to me. Plans. I have no plans. I don't know where I should go. The freedom I seek is not the freedom of the body, so I have been staying in the pool all these years. Pupilless said. I may walk around and see the world outside the pool. When Lin Feng and Shi Zhongtian heard Pupilless's somewhat childish words, they couldn't help but feel a little speechless. Although he was firm and pure, he was also quite naive. This was related to his experience growing up. In the pool, there were only him and the other golden-eyed black fish. As he continued to grow, apart from the big guy below, there was nothing that could threaten him at all. There was not even an existence that showed hostility towards him. Pupilless's experience to be able to form an indestructible demon soul and reach the realm of being one with the heavens and the earth was truly an anomaly. It was similar to the golden ball of light in the Xiantian realm, which was almost impossible to replicate. It was no wonder that no other golden-eyed black fish could truly achieve anything besides him. If he left the pool in his current state and left the Xiantian realm, it would be fine if he didn't run into a primordial spirit realm expert. Otherwise, if he ran into someone with evil intentions, he would be directly killed and turned into a great tonic. In fact, if a nascent soul expert like Marquis Jinghuanhu had made proper preparations and a thorough plan, it wasn't impossible for him to create a miracle of slaying a great sage. This pupilless great saint could be called the most unreliable great saint of the demon race in the history of the great heaven primordial world. Chapter 634. Lin Feng looked at Pupilless in front of him, thought for a moment, and said, although this golden light ball stimulated the void thunder tribulation to help you form your nascent soul, it can also help you in other aspects. But your cultivation depends more on yourself, right? Pupilless nodded his big head. Yes, I figure it out by myself. But staying beside it, I can more or less feel some principles, and it feels very useful. This was natural. Although the golden light ball below was not mature, it already contained the Tao of heaven and earth, and the true meaning of creation. Lin Feng looked at the many golden-eyed black fish swimming around him, saying, you've tried to enlighten and teach your own kind, but you've always failed. This is because you haven't been able to summarize and refine your own understanding of Tao techniques. It's not systematic. Your juniors of the same race are unable to learn systematically, resulting in twice the effort for half the result. Unless there is a junior who is as good as you and has great luck, it will be difficult for you to cultivate a successful successor. Pupilless pondered for a moment and said, makes sense. You are right. I understand a lot of principles, but when I explain them to my companions, I can't explain them clearly and make them understand. Lin Feng smiled slightly. If you want, you can join me in Xianmen Tianzong, figure out the Tao, and then teach it to your kind. I will also make it convenient for you. If there is anything you don't understand in the process of cultivation, I can guide you. Pupilless had no eyes, but he still made a looking gesture, looking at Lin Feng and asked curiously, are you willing to help me? He hesitated for a moment and carefully asked a question. Lin Feng listened and instantly smiled. No wonder this pupilless was able to make it this far without anyone's guidance. Just looking at the questions he asked, he could tell that they were very reliable. Pupilless cultivated himself into a demon, so he had his own demon Tao to cultivate. His questions to Lin Feng were beyond this demon Tao, and pointed directly to the origin of the Tao of heaven and earth. It was not that he wanted to hide it, but whether it was the Tao of the human clan or the demon clan, the ultimate source was the Tao of heaven and earth. His questions were always on point. Pupilless questions were not difficult for Lin Feng. He answered casually, and Pupilless suddenly felt enlightened. The problems that had been troubling him in the past were instantly solved. Even Shi Zhongtian, who was listening to Lin Feng's answers, felt that he had benefited a lot. He thought, Hao really has a great master. Pupil S had always explored and understood the problem of cultivation by himself. He had no one to guide him, and he didn't even have anyone to talk to. He also had an obsession towards cultivation, immediately pestering Lin Feng, and raising all of the questions he had in the past. After a while, Pupil S eyes and Feng and Shizhongtian, which made them feel very funny. His huge body swam back and forth in the pitch-black water. His demonic power fluctuated continuously. His divine sense and thoughts scattered everywhere, but he was continuously digesting Lin Feng's guidance. He was lost in thought for a moment, even forgetting Lin Feng and Shizhongtian at the side, which made the two of them quite amused. Lin Feng lightly said, "Do you want to come out of the water and take a walk, or continue to stay here?" Pupil S finally came back to his senses. He stopped and nodded. "I'm willing to go with you." "Then let's go." Lin Feng lowered his head and looked at the golden ocean under his feet. Then, he went up first. Shizhongtian and Pupil S followed him. Soon, 2 people and 1 demon rushed out of the water. In the outside world, there were many more points of reference, and Pupil S' body was even larger. There was a large rift valley above the pool, but it was too small compared to Pupil S' body. He directly crushed a large piece of earth and rocks. Pupil S was stunned. He also knew the way of transformation, but he had never been out of the pool in his life, so he was caught off guard. He quickly shrunk his body and turned into a big fish that was only 2 or 3 meters long. With his body shrunk a little, he looked more like a big black carp. He didn't have golden light in his eyes like other golden-eyed black fish. Pupil S swayed his tail and floated in the air. He looked like he was still swimming in the water. Lin Feng waved his hand, and Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, and the others reappeared. They looked at Pupil S with a complicated look. Pupil S himself didn't notice it. He was also carefully looking at them with his eyes that couldn't see. Suddenly his body swayed, and black light flickered. His appearance changed, and he transformed into a black-robed young man. He looked very ordinary, except for the whites of his eyes, which made him look somewhat terrifying. Zhu Yi and the others came to their senses and saluted Pupil S. "Hello, senior." Pupil S imitated them and also saluted them, but his movement was a little sluggish and clumsy. "Hello. Hello." Lin Feng said, "From today on, Pupil S is the same as Jieyu and the others. You are all people of Xianmen Tianzong." The others nodded. Zhu Yi looked at the deep pool below and asked, "Master, what should we do next? Do we protect the creation magic treasure embryo?" Lin Feng shook his head and smiled. "Get ready. We will officially open up the Xiantian realm." Zhu Yi, Shi Tianhao, Yongqing, and even Shizhongtian and Tuntin were a little surprised. "Master, that thing." Shi Tianhao pointed at his feet. Lin Feng smiled. "Don't worry. I have my own arrangements. We won't delay either of them." The disciples were immediately curious. But since Lin Feng had made a decision, they naturally followed it. After talking about business, Shi Tianhao stole a glance at Pupil S and secretly transmitted his voice to Lin Feng. "Master, those dark fish down there. You still say you've grown up?" Lin Feng looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. Shi Tianhao chuckled and Tuntin, who was at the side, was already drooling. If it wasn't for Wu Tong being at the side, it probably would have immediately dived into the water. Lin Feng shook his head. "Don't touch the things in the pool. I have my own arrangements." Shi Tianhao and Tuntin were akin to eggplants that had been hit by frost. Zhu Yi and Yongqing immediately knew what was going on, and helplessly shook their heads. Pupil S was still in a daze. He looked here and looked there, not knowing what was going on. "What do you plan to do next, Daoist Shi?" Lin Feng turned to look at Shizhongtian. Shizhongtian pondered for a moment and answered, "Sect leader Lin, I will have to trouble you to take care of Hao. I want to enter the void battlefield again. Hao's parents are still trapped in there. I heard from Hao, just now, that you specifically sent a nascent divinity clone into the void battlefield. I'll thank you in advance. You've put in a lot of effort for Hao's sake. The void battlefield is too big, and there are people from the underworld hall coveting it. I want to enter and try to find Violet Grave and the others as soon as possible." Lin Feng nodded. "Daoist Shi, I can understand your deep affection for your father. I won't interfere with your actions. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell me. Shi Zhongtian shook his head. How would I dare trouble sect leader Lin? It's just that I've been injured for a long time and need to heal first. He paused for a moment and glanced at Shi Tianhao. He then said to Lin Feng, also, I want to pass on everything I know to Howard. I hope sect leader Lin can understand. Generally speaking, the atmosphere of the human cultivation world in the vast land of the Divine Prefecture was inclusive, but there were also a few sects that did not allow their disciples to bring their skills to seek a master. And some sects did not allow their disciples to learn other sects' Taoist magic and supernatural powers privately. Shi Zhongtian didn't know about Lin Feng's rules, so he had to ask in advance. Lin Feng smiled. Do as you wish, I don't mind. Shi Zhongtian immediately said. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you for a few more days. I hope you don't mind. You're welcome. Lin Feng turned to Wu Tong with a smile. You're quite the glutton. The cauldron you swallowed earlier is what my disciple is looking for. Wu Tong scratched his head and opened his mouth. A small bronze cauldron flew out and landed in front of Lin Feng and the others. It was the last void cauldron. Lin Feng opened his palm and took the cauldron into his hand. Good, the void mountain and river cauldron and the set of 9 mother and son cauldrons are all complete now. However, there are still some things to pay attention to if I want to cultivate the frigid ice fruit into the karmic firewood. Just having the blessed spirit soil won't be enough. When Xia Huang died and Ding of Shenzhou went missing, there were many things that needed to be planned carefully. Lin Feng thought, let's build the heaven mystic realm first. I hope this place can become a foundation pillar of the sect. Doing this kind of practical thing naturally needed to make the best use of people, and Dao Jiqiang was a very suitable candidate. Speaking of which, the bitter external chief steward had just sorted out the clues of Cloud Mirror City and Cloud Peak. At this moment, the burden was quite heavy. Now Lin Feng was going to put the burden on him again and increase the weight. As the old saying goes, the capable do more work. Fortunately, Dao Jiqiang was more or less prepared for this. He knew that Xianmen Tianzong was about to enter a stage of rapid development, and all kinds of things would emerge one after another. Therefore, he usually picked reliable and capable talents and promoted them to be his helpers. Together with Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and other personal disciples, Dao Jiqiang was among the first batch of people who knew about the existence of the heaven mystic realm. As soon as he received the news, he immediately realized the problems he was about to face. He immediately began to hand over his work in Cloud Mirror City to people he trusted, and selected competent people. He was very tight-lipped. Although he was selecting people, he did not leak any information. It was not until Lin Feng officially informed him to go to the heaven mystic realm that he took his capable subordinates and followed Wang Lin to this undeveloped medium-class world. The few of them naturally could not start the construction immediately. They had to survey and plan first, and then mobilize a large number of people to officially start the construction. In addition to various mineral and medicinal resources, Dao Jiqiang and the others also had to explore the basic topography and determine the area suitable for immigrants to live in. Lin Feng had already expressed his idea. He wanted to migrate to the heaven mystic realm and increase the population so as to expand the talent selection of his own sect and make it easier to grasp the details of these talents. Since they were going to migrate, it naturally had to be livable. It had to be suitable for both cultivators and ordinary people. Xianmen Tianzong began its own construction in full swing, but there was no impenetrable wall in the world. There was no need for Xianmen Tianzong to leak the secret. For primordial spirit realm cultivators, such a big event as the opening of the domain barrier passage might not be discovered from a distance, but if they happened to pass by, they would immediately notice it. Zen Master Dade sat in the valley of the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain, guarding the domain passage connecting the heaven mystic realm and the divine land. One morning, a drop of dust suddenly fell on his enlightened Zen heart. The old monk frowned slightly and looked up into the distance. His eyes turned into bright Buddha's light. Wherever it shone, the void rippled like water, and a figure appeared. Chapter 635. Zen Master Dade cultivated the complete version of the Infinite Light Buddha Sutra, the Amitabha Sutra, the Great Light Mantra, and the 3000 Illumination Dharma were all complete. Although he was kind and did not like to fight, his Buddhist cultivation was profound. His Zen heart was clear, and his perceptive ability was outstanding. What's more, his opponent didn't bother to hide his tracks. The Buddhist light from Zen Master Dade shone on the distant sky. The void rippled like water, revealing the figure of a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had a square face, and his aura was vast and steady. He stood in the sky, sword chi rushing into the sky. He was like a straight golden pillar that stood on the ground, supporting the sky above his head. He seemed to be independent of the world, a body of his own, but also faintly resonated with the great Tao of heaven and earth. Zen Master Dade sat on the ground without moving. He put his palms together. So it soared Venerable Xiaoyang. It's been a long time. The middle-aged man in the sky was the sword master of the Xiaoyang sword lineage, one of the 6 lineages of Shu Mountain, Sword Venerable Xiaoyang. Sword Venerable Xiaoyang had already reached the primordial spirit reversion realm thousands of years ago. However, facing Zen Master Dade, who had reached the primordial spirit incarnation realm, he did not dare to approach. He only stood far away. Zen Master Dade rubbed the decree that Lin Feng had given him, smiling as he shook his head. Sword Venerable Xiaoyang was too cautious. He was much harder to deal with than the others. Sword Venerable Xiaoyang said calmly, "It has indeed been a long time, Dade." His gaze swept across the valley where Zen Master Dade was. The border of this realm passageway is very stable. It doesn't seem to lead to infinite wasteland or the void battlefield. Instead, it seems to lead to a dimensional realm. Among the known dimensional realms, I've never heard of a new realm passageway that connects to the divine land. Then, does this passageway behind you lead to a brand new dimensional realm? Zen Master Dade sighed and stood up. With one step, he arrived at where Sword Venerable Xiaoyang had been standing. Unexpectedly, Sword Venerable Nusun retreated instead of advancing. Facing Zen Master Dade, whose cultivation was lower than his, he rapidly retreated. His entire body transformed into a streak of sword light, already disappearing from Zen Master Dade's vision without a trace. Zen Master Dade shook his head. Revered swordsman Xiaoyang was too cautious and too decisive. If he had even the slightest thought of fighting back, he might have been stopped by Lin Feng's decree. Only by retreating without hesitation, without the slightest bit of hope, and wholeheartedly escaping, would he have a chance to escape. In fact, that was exactly what Sword Venerable Xiaoyang had done. Even though the sword Tao he cultivated was neutral and peaceful, as a sword cultivator, Sword Venerable Young Sun would rather break than bend. However, today's situation was special. Sword Venerable Young Sun decisively chose the most advantageous and correct choice. Because to him, as long as he could escape, it would be equivalent to victory. Zen Master Dade sighed and passed the news to Lin Feng. After learning of the situation, Lin Feng did not feel vexed. Instead, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I already know of the matter. Zen Master, there is no need to take it to heart. Continue to guard the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain, and prevent the invasions of thieves." Zen Master Dade was a little surprised. The Shushan sword sect had received the news. Even if they did not invade, spreading the news would inevitably bring trouble to Xianmen Tianzong. Given Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong's current strength, unless Taishu Temple launched an all-out attack, or the other major forces joined forces, Xianmen Tianzong could withstand it. But if Xiantian realm became the main battlefield, with a small disturbance every 3 days and a big fight every 5 days, then Xianmen Tianzong's construction of this medium-class world would have to be put on hold. The overall construction plan of the sect would also be disrupted, and the development would be delayed. Although he was a guest, Xianmen Tianzong respected Zen Master Dade very much and did not hide many things from him. Therefore, Zen Master Dade knew that after the Battle of West Hill City, no matter the objective conditions or Lin Feng's own subjective will, Xianmen Tianzong would enter a stage of rapid development. In this case, constantly entangling with other forces would undoubtedly divert their own energy. But seeing that Lin Feng seemed to have a well-thought-out plan, Zen Master Dade still nodded. He just reminded, "Master, you need to beware of the change of the Qin dynasty's mind. This place is located at the edge of the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. Not only is it close to Shushan, but it is also close to the sphere of influence of the Qin dynasty." Lin Feng smiled slightly. Zen Master Dade's words showed that he was serious about Xianmen Tianzong. "Master, thank you." Zen Master Dade's reminder was also within the scope of Lin Feng's consideration. On Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng was thinking carefully. From his point of view, he had always opposed the behavior of eating alone. At least when he ate the meat, he should leave some soup for others. It was not that he was so generous, but it was convenient for him to have more opportunities to eat meat in the future. He definitely wanted to make Xiantian realm his sect's private land, and he would not allow others to covet it. The magic treasure embryo of creation was also in his pocket. If anyone dared to touch it, he would cut off his hand. But this was mainly limited to territorial sovereignty, and no one was allowed to touch it. All kinds of resources produced in Xiantian realm could be shared with other forces. Of course, it would not be shared for free, but it was a good thing for both parties to establish a stable and equal communication channel. Especially after the exploration of Shitianhao and others, there were quite some good products in Xiantian realm, which were urgently needed by some sects in the Divine Land. Through this communication channel, Lin Feng could also make it convenient for his own sect to obtain various kinds of precious resources from other forces. As for the trouble that might be caused, Lin Feng smiled. Different situations called for different actions, and he would just deal with it. In this world, people could not give up eating for fear of choking. It was worth doing it if the benefits outweighed the risks. When Xiaoyang Swordmaster returned to Mount Shu, it was naturally impossible for Mount Shu to keep the secret for Lin Feng. Soon, the news that Xianmen Tianzong had opened up a new medium-class world spread throughout the great heaven world. For a time, the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain became turbulent, and heroes gathered. Intimidated by the strength of Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong, most people were still in the stage of observing secretly, and did not act rashly. Lin Feng did not know whether to laugh or cry. The first to come to him were some local small and medium-sized cultivation forces in the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. Of course, they did not overestimate themselves and rush to take a share of the profits. Instead, they were so polite that they were almost humble, hoping to be closer to Xianmen Tianzong, so that their cultivators would have the opportunity to enter Xiantian realm to gain experience. Of course, there were also many sects that expressed their hope to buy the resources produced in Xiantian realm. Some sects even sought to become Xianmen Tianzong's agents in the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain. Lin Feng naturally left these matters to his disciples, and he did not pay much attention to them. The only thing that made him slightly interested was that Beyond Heaven Mountain actually came to him. This sect had always been attached to Mount Shu Sword sect. After Xianmen Tianzong unified the Kunlun Mountain area, many people thought that Beyond Heaven Mountain was a nail that Mount Shu had inserted into Kunlun Mountain. However, after the Battle of West Hill City, there were rumors that Beyond Heaven Mountain and Mount Shu were gradually drifting apart. Although they did not show any goodwill to Xianmen Tianzong, the upper echelons of Beyond Heaven Mountain seemed to have other ideas, and their attitude toward Mount Shu Sword sect was not as warm as before. Strictly speaking, in terms of geographical distance, Beyond Heaven Mountain was not far from the entrance of Xiantian realm. The sudden appearance of Xiaoyang Swordsman near the southern foothills of Kunlun Mountain might actually be because he was visiting Beyond Heaven Mountain and noticed the unusual movements here, so he came to investigate on the way. And this time, Beyond Heaven Mountain took the initiative to visit. In the eyes of the outside world, it confirmed their intention to change sections. This kind of fence-sitter behavior might be a bit disdainful in the eyes of large sects, but it was extremely common in small and medium-sized sections. In order to survive in the cracks between large powers, it was necessary to be tactful. When Beyond Heaven Mountain was attached to Mount Shu in the past, although it was regarded as a nail that had been inserted into Kunlun Mountain, Beyond Heaven Mountain itself had always behaved itself, and did not cause any trouble for Xianmen Tianzong. Now that the conflict between Xianmen Tianzong and Mount Shu Sword sect was becoming more and more antagonistic, The power that was originally attached to Beyond Heaven Mountain was undoubtedly a good signal, and it would also serve as an example for other powers that were attached to Mount Shu. Therefore, when Zhu Yi received the guests from Beyond Heaven Mountain, he did not reject them at the door. Of course, he was not particularly enthusiastic either, and he had a good sense of propriety. The head of Beyond Heaven Mountain, Wu Yunliang, personally made this trip. Looking at Zhu Yi in front of him, who was already at the yuanying stage, he secretly sighed in his heart. After saying goodbye to Zhu Yi, he stood in the middle of the mountains, his thoughts flying. A middle-aged man, who looked to be about the same age as him, who was also at the yuanying stage, stood to the side and said lightly, "Head Senior Marshal Brother, this is a rare opportunity. Haven't we been biding our time for this opportunity?" Wu Yunliang expressionlessly looked at the middle-aged man. "Junior Marshal Brotherly, what I am worried about is that no matter if this step is right or wrong, our Beyond Heaven Mountain may not be able to recover." The middle-aged man surnamedly was silent for a long time, and finally sighed. "If this is really the case, then it is fate." Wu Yunliang no longer looked at him, and looked at the flowing clouds in the sky. "Yes, man proposes, God disposes." Xianmen Tianzong received the visiting small and medium-sized sections. Although it was only preliminary contact, and there was no substantial progress in many matters, their overall attitude was quite magnanimous, and their way of doing things was not domineering. When the news spread, the large sects that were observing gradually felt more confident, and they began to contact Xianmen Tianzong one after another. And the first to visit was the Great Qin dynasty. King Anliang Shizongyue personally came to Yujing Mountain. Speaking of which, this primordial spirit returning to Void Stage Big Shot was quite powerful in the Great Qin dynasty. However, in order to communicate with Xianmen Tianzong, he had to frequently run errands like this. After all, among the important figures of the Great Qin dynasty, he was the most familiar with Xianmen Tianzong. Shizongyue brought the opinion of the Great Qin dynasty, which acknowledged Xianmen Tianzong's dominant control over the Xianmen realm, but hoped that Great Qin could also send people to the Xianmen realm to participate in the development of this undeveloped medium-class world. In exchange, Great Qin was willing to unconditionally support Xianmen Tianzong's immigration plan. Chapter 636. According to the information that Xianmen Tianzong had intentionally revealed, the Qin dynasty was very interested in the water marrow crystal, an evil-warding purple gold in the Xiantian realm. They hoped to send people there, and obtain the rights to mine them. On one hand, it would be difficult to guarantee the supply if they were to purchase them through communication channels. On the other hand, Xianmen Tianzong would have complete control over the Xiantian realm. This was something that the Qin dynasty did not want to see. The Qin dynasty hoped to obtain the rights to enter the Xiantian realm through supporting Xianmen Tianzong's immigration plan. They had no interest in controlling the vast territory of the Xiantian realm and the entire medium-class world. They only asked for the rights to mine the water marrow crystal, an evil-warding purple gold. Lin Feng and Xianmen Tianzong wanted to migrate to the Xiantian realm and reproduce. They needed a basic population. In the human world of the Divine Land, ordinary people lived a stable life. There were very few refugees. Although it was a cultivation world, ordinary people still valued their homeland very much. Voluntary migration was not an easy thing to do. Of course, directly coercing people was another matter, but this was not a wise method. The Qin dynasty had a large number of people. With the government's orders and Xianmen Tianzong's generous land treatment, migration would be much easier. The people who migrate are all originally under the rule of the Qin dynasty. If they enter the Xiantian realm and reproduce in the future, who will the Xiantian realm belong to? Shi Tianhao cursed silently. Zhu Yi said silently. This will depend on the education of the next few generations. If we want to migrate, we will have to move our entire clan here. We will completely cut off our ties with the outside world and grow up here. We will naturally exclude those who come with a mission. There won't be many of them. Otherwise, the Qin dynasty will be looking for trouble. Since they have put forward such conditions, there might be some sand mixed in, but overall, ordinary people will still be the majority. They have to make things convenient for us as much as possible. Otherwise, there is no need to talk. Lin Feng naturally knew what his disciples were talking about, but he didn't plan on taking advantage of the Qin dynasty. Lin Feng smiled faintly at Shi Zhongyue, then suddenly changed the topic. King Onliang, I just remembered that the Heaven Mystic Realm produces another kind of resource. Shi Zhongyue's heart skipped a beat, but his expression remained unchanged as he asked. Oh? I don't know what it is, but I hope that the Celestial Sect of Wonders can show me. Lin Feng chuckled and softly recited 3 words, Origin Magnetic Steel. Shi Zhongyue suddenly fell silent. Although the expression on his face didn't change, he was already laughing bitterly in his heart. Origin Magnetic Steel was a very special cultivation resource. It contained the magnetic force of 2 poles, and this magnetic force was very special. After refining it with a secret method, each piece of origin magnetic steel would be independent of each other, but it could also establish a mysterious magic power connection. Moreover, it was not a one-to-one communication, but a one-to-many, or even a many-to-many communication. For ordinary cultivators or sects, this thing was most commonly used. Apart from being a communication tool, it was also used by the Dao soldiers nurtured by the great powers to form formations. Speaking of Dao soldier formations, one had to mention the Great Zhou Dynasty's Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation. The Great Zhou Dynasty's Divine Martial Army was the only army in the world that was organized and assembled on a large scale. It didn't require the participants to cultivate the same Dao technique, and could form a formation to gather everyone's power. Through the Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation, everyone, from primordial spirit cultivators to Qi refinement cultivators, could link their magic power together and become one. In the cultivation world, once the difference in cultivation level reached a certain level, quantity lost its meaning. Great cultivators could move mountains and fill seas with a flip of their hands. They could kill countless low-level cultivators with a single palm strike. If the difference in cultivation level was too great, quantity could not make up for quality. On the other hand, the Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation and other Dao soldier systems did not simply carry out the superposition of quantity. Through profound methods, it caused the quantitative change to finally lead to a qualitative change, completely changing the pattern of power. From this, it allowed low-level cultivators to have the ability to fight against high-level cultivators. In the battle of vanquishing Buddhism in the past, facing the Great Thunder Temple's Mountain Protection Formation, one of the top formations in the human cultivation world, the Vairocana Formation, several tens of thousands of Divine Martial Army cultivators worked together and forcefully blew it open. Even though they had the help of the revered formation breaking drum, this battle result was still extremely shocking. This kind of qualitative change was not limitless, but it was enough to attract everyone's attention. Other sects nurture Dao soldiers, because they all use the same secret method to cultivate. Their numbers are in the end limited. The beauty of the Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation is that it can link the magic power of cultivators who cultivate different Dao techniques into one, forming a formation. The Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation was rumored to have been created by the Marquis of Xuanji, Zhu Honggu. But in fact, this method originated from the secret method used by the Grand Emperor, who ended the immemorial epoch, to train the soldiers under him. After the fall of the Grand Emperor, the secret method was gradually lost until the Great Zhou Empire excavated the Grand Emperor's ruins and obtained the damaged Grand Emperor Palace. Only then did this secret method see the light of day. After Zhu Hongwu organized and modified it, it finally became the current Divine Martial Immortal Extermination Formation. Other than the secret method of formation, to achieve the best effect, it naturally needed the coordination of other things. When the Great Zhou Empire forged the standard equipment for the Divine Martial Army cultivators, they would specially add magnetic steel to strengthen the connection of magic power between the soldiers and make it easier for the general to command. But unfortunately, the production of magnetic steel in the Divine Land was extremely low, far from enough to satisfy the needs of the Divine Martial Army. In these years, other than searching for magnetic steel veins, The Great Zhou Empire also tried to find a substitute for magnetic steel, but there was no great harvest. At this time, if a large and high-quality magnetic steel vein suddenly appeared in front of Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu, they would definitely be happy to accept it. With Xianmen Tianzong's own strength, if they wanted to rob it, they would have to think twice. But if it was just to help with immigration, then the Great Zhou Empire would be happy to do this business. Their need for magnetic steel was much greater than Great Qin's need for water marrow crystals and evil-warding purple gold. And if Great Zhou obtained a sufficient supply of magnetic steel, their strength would increase correspondingly. Because it was of the same lineage as the Grand Emperor, if the divine martial immortal extermination formation's power was raised to the extreme, it could even affect the Grand Emperor Palace. Once the Grand Emperor Palace recovered to its former peak, it would be a powerful creation magic treasure. If it could be improved further, it would be even more terrifying. Now, although everyone was facing Taishu Temple together, as the two great dynasties, Great Zhou and Great Qin still had conflicts. The other party's sudden increase in strength was a threat to both Taishu Temple and himself. Lin Feng flipped his palm and a piece of pure white metal, appeared in the center of his palm. Shi Zongyue didn't even need to use his divine sense to scan it, and he could recognize that this was an unpurified magnetic steel ore. Although it was just a raw ore, it was very rich in magnetic steel. As an ore, its quality was very good. Lin Feng lightly tapped the air with his finger, and an illusion of light appeared, reflecting a mountain range. As the focus shifted, it went deep into the mountain range, and an entire vein of white light appeared in front of Shi Zongyue. The vein emitted a powerful magnetic force, forming a violent disturbance. With Lin Feng's magic power, even the illusion of light shook slightly when he crossed the void. Seeing this, Shi Zongyue immediately knew that what Lin Feng said was true and sighed inwardly. Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu were both ambitious. Strictly speaking, Lin Feng wouldn't be happy to see Great Zhou's strength increase, but compared to Xianmen Tianzong, the Qin dynasty would undoubtedly be under more pressure. The Qin dynasty couldn't tolerate the Great Zhou dynasty obtaining magnetic steel in exchange for something else. They might even consider joining forces with the Great Zhou dynasty to pressure Xianmen Tianzong, but magnetic steel was definitely out of the question. They could tolerate the divine martial immortal extermination formation, but if it could really improve the Grand Emperor Palace, it would be unacceptable no matter what. When the two sides negotiated, the side with less weight naturally couldn't insist on their original opinion when facing the side with more weight. Lin Feng also left some leeway, allowing the cultivators of the Great Qin dynasty to enter the Heaven Mystic Realm to investigate the actual reserves of the water marrow crystals, evil-warding violet gold, and other mines. From there, he could determine the amount that would be delivered to the Great Qin dynasty during each transaction. He gave them some preferential treatment in this regard to ensure a large supply. The news of the magnetic steel didn't spread, and only Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin dynasty knew about it. Now that the deal with the Great Qin dynasty had been completed, Xianmen Tianzong would naturally prevent the magnetic steel from flowing into the Great Zhou dynasty. The Great Qin dynasty would help Xianmen Tianzong migrate. With Xianmen Tianzong in control of the situation, the Great Qin dynasty naturally wouldn't play any tricks and would fully cooperate. During the negotiations, Shi Zongyue, Stonefeather, and the other higher-ups of the Great Qin dynasty had communicated with each other. In the end, everyone in the Great Qin dynasty felt quite helpless. After finalizing the intention to cooperate with the Great Qin dynasty, Lin Feng started to receive the next group of guests. The focus of the discussion this time was the dark light meteoric steel. Dark light meteoric steel was one of the 6 great metals in the world. It was one of the best materials to refine flying swords and other metal weapons. As long as 1 or 2 grams or even a few grams were put into a flying sword, the strength of the flying sword would increase by a level, and it would also have special uses that were different from normal swords. When the Shazhou city's Xianmen Tianzong first opened their gates, the Great Zhou dynasty sent 10 kilograms of dark light meteoric steel as a congratulatory gift. The dark light meteoric steel that the Great Zhou dynasty sent naturally wasn't raw ore, but a refined, ready-made treasure. 10 kilograms didn't sound like much, but relative to its uses and production, It was actually a very large number. At that time, the Celeritas sword sect's ancestor Qingwei, the Blaze sword sect's ancestor Fei Hua, and the other Yuanying ancestors were all extremely envious. This was a transaction between the Great Zhou and Xianmen Tianzong. If it was a small or medium-sized force, they would have directly robbed it. And one of the most important resources that Xianmen Tianzong discovered in developing the Xiantian realm this time was an entire dark light meteoric steel vein. The reserves of the vein were enormous and the quality was also quite good, surpassing most of the dark light meteoric steel veins in the Divine Land. The same amount of raw, or can be refined into more dark light meteoric steel. Such a vein, other than satisfying Xianmen Tianzong's own use, is also a very important chip in Lin Feng's hands. The Old Sword Immortal, the Star Constellation Sword Venerable, the Desolate Sword Venerable, and the Thunderbolt Sword Venerable, who appeared in front of Lin Feng right now, all came for this reason after receiving the news. 4 sword cultivators, if they could add in dark light meteoric steel when refining swords, it would be a huge improvement. Everyone, we must admit that Xianmen Tianzong is very powerful today. If we negotiate with them alone, we will inevitably be at a disadvantage. The Old Sword Immortal was the first to arrive at Kunlun Mountain and specifically waited in the mountain ridge, intercepting the Star Constellation Sword Venerable and the others, contacting them to come together. Only if we join forces and negotiate with Xianmen Tianzong can we achieve the desired effect. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.